Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Have No Sphere Friday French cast. That's right. It is Friday. We made it. TGIF. That's flat. That's Frank. I don't know. We're here. You made it. That's what matters. We have a great show planned. Oh my goodness. The guest we have in line today. We've been waiting. We've been hoping. We've been trying to make this work. And finally, the planets have aligned. That's right. I said planet. Hello, everybody. Walt here. Hope you had a great week. It's Friday. We're going to chill. We're going to relax. We're going to get to know our guest here in a few minutes. Let me introduce the fellows. You know them. You love them. We have Zach, too nice for Rice Zabala. That's right. The nomad himself. Zach, how are you this week, sir?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful, Walt. Been a good week. Weather's finally starting to cool off down here a little bit. Just the high 70s now, so I'm I'm loving life. Hank and his new friend Buddy are thick as thieves. They've been running around here chasing lizards, and they've got the campsite on lockdown to where not a lizard is allowed to move around the
Get
place.
those lizards. That's what I'm
So
all about.
yeah, it's just been so much fun sitting there just watching those two. Um, yeah, it's been a good week though. Weather's been great, and traveling's going well.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. We also have with us, as always, that Adam, the man behind the secret weapon, the secret sauce, the sound production. How are you, Adam? How is it, my friend?
Can you hear me?
Ah, the secret sauce. It worked. Yes.
I'm just checking. I didn't know what was going off there. Yeah, fantastic, mate. Looking forward to this evening. We've been chatting with the guest.
The guest secrets,
um,
secrets.
yeah, and I'm excited already because I
I
think
am too.
I think I alluded. He's a man of a very different background to us, but of a very similar mind. I think so. I'm looking forward to having a not necessarily a debate, but uh, a good old chat. Um, so yeah, I had a lovely week as well. Been busy because I know we've got something else planned for after Mort leaves. Been busy trying to put a few slides together. Some of the work
Oh,
that
we. That's awesome. That's awesome. I know
Zach's
exactly what you
done.
mean on that one.
Yeah. So hopefully at the end of this, we'll have a little bit of a just an update with what is quite a current topic, particularly in the flat Earth at the moment, with
Absolutely.
regards
I've
to
seen video after video pop up
yeah,
about this. So, Zach, you definitely have started a revolution. Let me move on to our buddy
yeah.
across the pond there. Savage. I don't have the sound bite. I can't play it for you, John. How are you, friend?
Yeah, not too bad at all. Not too bad at all. Had a very good week. Really looking forward to tonight and chatting with Mark. I'm so bad with names that, as you guys know, and my memory is appalling, legendarily appalling. That I was listening to Crow 777 this week, number 130 is podcast, and they were talking about the music industry and a book by a guy called McGowan, who I'm sure our guest can fill us in on. But I'm going to let it drop on because I've already put a tweet out anyway. But they mentioned this
It's
guy
in the
Mark
bloody title.
Devlin who had taken over the mantle from McGowan, and I was walking around the fields going, Mark Devlin, where do I know that bloody name from? And then it just clicked. Oh bloody hell, we've got him coming on Friday. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this, and yep, someone better introduce him pretty quick, smart.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Instead of us all rambling on and on about our amazing guest, how about we just introduce and meet him and get to know him? Everyone, instead of me rambling and filling you in, let's just introduce the man. Hello, Mark Devlin. We're so glad to have you here on the Iron Realm French cast here on Have No Sphere. Welcome, sir.
Well, thank you. And what a build up. No pressure, eh? After that mystery guest.
But
Glad to be on with you. And I've got to say, I love the fact that today's date is 9/11. When
I
you
was
express it in the UK way, anyway, the proper way of expressing
Absolutely the right
dates.
way. Exactly.
9/11, yeah. It seems whenever I do one of these shows, the date is kind of scheduled randomly and arbitrarily, and it always ends up having some sort of occult significance to it. So
Does
did a
that
show
bode,
with
bode
Billy Ray
well or not?
Valentine the other day on Halloween, and here we are a few days later on 9/11. So no
Mate,
shortage of discussion points today, right?
I'll tell you what, correcting these Americans has become a bit of a tradition for the Brits on this side. We've
Right.
had
And
John.
it's aluminium, not aluminum.
They've even
You
done
get-
that on TFR. They did stand corrected. I heard that the other day. We've
the
had
buoy
John
and
Get
sea.
Jeranism admit that it is maths, not math.
Yeah.
And I've got one, if I can get on board. I was trying to get Zach to. These Americans have these things that float in water called buoys, don't they?
Yeah,
and yet
it's a buoy.
it's a buoy, isn't it? And is it density and buoyancy?
I've been using that.
Yeah, good minor. So
Saying it.
that's our next conversion that we've got coming up, Mark. But so yeah,
We're gonna break this
Yeah.
whole vocabulary down.
And also,
for
it's Adolf Hitler, not Adolf Hitler, just for reference.
Absolutely. Well, on that note,
Just
Adam,
to
I think that's a good segue into the first question about. Do many people know that you have considered and looked into the flat Earth phenomena?
It's not something I tend to shout from the rooftops
I
about.
bet.
I've never done a specific show about it, but I've dropped many little hints and many little sound bites into radio shows that I've done and public presentations. So anyone paying attention with their ear to the ground would be able to determine where I stand on this whole thing, because there's no shortage of, little clues and pointers. So I kind of started making these little public expressions a couple of years ago, I guess, because it took me until that point to become convinced of where I stood on the whole thing. I floundered for quite a while and sat on the fence for a good couple of years, as I'm sure most people do. And then I reached the point where really it had become undeniable to me. And it was pretty bloody obvious that we've been completely lied to systematically about the true cosmology of the place that we live. And I consider myself to be an open-minded, critically thinking truth seeker. That's what we're all supposed to be. And so if that's what you are, you go where the information takes you, no matter what. Sometimes it's unsettling, sometimes it's uncomfortable, sometimes it means admitting to a lifetime of mind control. But it's not the first time I've had to admit to that. I expose all these music acts and all these different scenes and genres, which previously I used to lap up and really enjoy. And now here I am telling everyone that these artists are not who you thought they were, and that the music industry is being used for mind control and social engineering. It's very uncomfortable territory, but I'd already had a grounding in being prepared to go to some of these uncomfortable places. So it set me in good stead for where I stood on the nature of the place that we live.
Well, that's good to know. I didn't know you were so far down the rabbit hole and actually brave enough to make that sort of conclusion one way or the other. It's but
I'm there.
It doesn't
I heard you
surprise
give
me.
Billy Ray a prod actually, and he ignored it on that interview.
Yeah, I exactly. I do drop these little hints and pointers, and sometimes people pick up on them, and sometimes they ignore them. I think Billy Ray's sympathetic to it, actually, from conversations I've had with him.
He's a
But
closet
obviously
flat earther, mate. He's a closet one.
Right. Yeah, I know a few of those. But obviously, I've copped a lot of flack, and certain people have actually shut themselves off from the entirety of my work, the whole body of my work, just because of my stance on this one issue, which is incredibly small-minded. But there are people that will do that. They're prepared to throw out everything else that you have to say on the basis of disagreeing with you on this one fundamental point. If you want to have a Facebook argument that will last for weeks and weeks and weeks, mention Paul McCartney, Donald Trump, or Flat Earth. Any of those will do it.
Right, you've already got rid of my question number one, which was, is it 9/11? And now you're on to question two, Paul McCartney, which is Walt's thing.
Oh, we're segueing nicely here.
Absolutely. Like it was built that way.
Yeah.
So what was your question,
actually,
Adam?
You know what? There's a lot of 9/11 synchronicity when it comes to the Beatles. I think it's today, actually, that the 50th anniversary edition of the Beatles' White Album is being released.
Really?
I'm pretty sure that was released on the 9th of November 1968, and certainly there's a new version of it coming out. I think that is today. And there's all kinds of references in Beatles history to the date 9th of November, like TV interviews that the group did, songs that were recorded on this particular date. It certainly weaves itself into the whole Beatles story, that particular date. And there's the connection there with Aleister Crowley and all this number magic that he was involved with. And the Beatles were one of many acts that expressed a reverence for the occult teachings of Aleister Crowley. So the whole thing goes very deep and it's interconnected at every level.
I wanted to talk to you about David Bowie a bit later and his last album, Black Star. What you made of it, but since you brought up Crowley anyway, you might as well. Have you done any research into what on earth that whole album and was about?
Well, yeah, I did at the time, and it seems to be a closing chapter to Bowie's career. And many researchers commented that it appeared to show someone that was aware of his imminent demise and was preparing for it and encoding it into his art. This, of course, fuels rumours that Bowie's death was in some way a hoax and that he didn't actually die, but just went off to live out his remaining years outside of the public spotlight. We get this whenever a high-profile artist is reported to have died, of course. You know, people say that about Prince, about Michael Jackson, about Tupac, about Elvis. To be honest, it's impossible to know. I would say you can only go with your best guess based on the evidence that's available to you. And I always say that I don't think you can make a blanket statement and say that all these artists fake their own deaths. It's quite possible that some do, but it's pretty clear to me that some of these deaths are genuine. When it comes to Bowie, I don't know. I really couldn't say. He was a master asset of the industry for many decades, of course. He pushed many different agendas, not least the promotion of androgyny and the blurring of the gender, you know, with that wearing makeup and all his garb and stuff in the 1970s.
Yeah. With that in mind, right, guys, rather than going into specific individual celebrities, do you think, Mark, that maybe there's, in regards to the whole mind control system, that these celebrity identities, their lives, their highs, their lows, is all part of the control system of engaging, whether it's just distraction, but also maybe sometimes emotional control of large population, all sorts of things. Do you think outside of this that actually this whole thing is just another part of the stage, simply?
You're asking if artists kind of use these personas for the purposes of mind control and it's not really them, but it's an act that they're...
I wonder whether the artists are even real. You're in a better position. To me, you know, I look at the current artists, as you call them, of today, and, you know, it all seems more manufactured than it was when I'm 45. I think you're a similar age. You know, when we were kids. There appeared to be an earning to some of it. I think if we looked at the Beatles, necessarily even going back that far, we could question how well earned fame is. And with that in mind, are the rises to fame just part of the system, just like the politics is, the pretense that there's debate, the pretense of this pretense of fame, and how much controlled is all of it? Do you know what I mean? Is it... Stop rambling. I hope you get my point.
Well, so many of these musicians are actors. They're playing a role. You know, famously, we can look at Jim Morrison. He comes up in pretty much every conversation. This ties back into the work of Dave McGowan, where he revealed in his great book, Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, that Jim Morrison's father was the naval admiral in charge of the fleet of ships at the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which pretty much started the Vietnam War. So you've got this iconic larger-than-life rock god in Jim Morrison, who appears to be anti-establishment and anti-war, and his father's out there stirring up unrest in Southeast Asia, resulting in millions of people dying in the Vietnam War. And Jim Morrison was an actor. He took part in a promotional video for the University of Florida in 1964, way before he got reinvented as a rock star. Then you got the likes of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Who and groups like this, and they're quite clearly all actors playing roles. An associate of mine said that one time they were sat on a flight next to Mick Jagger. They just happened to find themselves next to Mick Jagger, and they got into conversation with him, and he'd had a few drinks, so he became a bit loose-tongued. And he told this person that his job all along, all these decades, had been to keep the masses in base consciousness and, you know, rooted in their lower chakras and connected to sort of carnal desires, basically sex and drugs and rock and roll, and very much pandering to that base aspect of their nature rather than exploring any kind of spirituality or consciousness. So it, you know, he's supposed to have actually come out and stated that as having been his job all along. And I think there's different grades to these musicians. When you look at somebody like the Beatles or the Rolling Stones or David Bowie, they're very high up the pecking order, I would suggest, and they're very key assets. They're used to push many of these agendas. And I think in many cases, they're very much aware of what they're actually doing. But then you've got all these pop puppets that we have in the contemporary era, which you just alluded to there. You can think of all the Miley Cyruses and Taylor Swifts and Katy Perrys and, you know, Poppy, this artist that I mentioned earlier. And I think many of these are just manipulated marionettes, you know, and they just do what they're told to do. And they've got handlers and call the real shots and understand what's really going on. So they're nowhere near of the level of some of these previous musicians who were, you know, sort of dark magicians and social engineers in their own right.
If we was gonna say that, are you saying that basically the system now has full control and there's no access to individual talent that is able to speak out? Like, I don't know, Walt's probably better to speak on this with regards to the Beatles, but you see the assassination of some of them, the change of Paul McCartney. For me, it's alluded to some of the liberal speaking that they were making, some of the thoughts that they were generating in people. Is part of this mechanization of the music industry an attempt of controlling again the mainstream narrative? Do you think that's...
Well, I think it always has been, and the industry's always been in control. But I think they used to seek out musicians that had a bit of talent and had some personality and some sparkle and some charisma, which is how many of these early groups got so readily adopted into the public mindset. But I think in recent years, they've given up on that. And now they just have these puppets that perform to order. And that's why the music is also friggin' bland now and vacuous. I mean, when was the last time, being honest about it, you heard a new song on the radio that made you sit up and go, God damn, that's good. That is special. That's breaking boundaries. That's some real creative stuff right there. That's incredible. I can't remember the last time I had that reaction to anything on the radio. And yet that was my reaction to many of the songs from the 60s, 70s, and to a lesser extent, the 80s. I think they've given up on seeking genuine creativity. And the so-called artists we've got today are there simply to push agendas and to sow attitudes and mindsets and reactions in the minds of the general public. That's their job. And, you know,
with regards can I just, I've got one point, and this is my only music question I have, really, and it's not so much born out of the music knowledge, it's born out of watching life change around me. And that was, I was a kid off the estate in the 70s and 80s in Nottingham. And so there was a small amount of black culture that came in. And I think probably like most kids who were 10 in the early 80s, 10, you know, got into a little bit of the Beastie Boys, Run DMC, etc., etc. And at that point it was new, it was interesting. But it wasn't pervasive to society. And what I saw over the 80s, I got into a bit of MC Hammer, and everything was good lyric-wise. But what
Vanilla
I
Ice.
saw... well, there is if you listen out there, mate, there is actually a Vanilla Ice version of me singing some Flat Earth raps. I won't... it's available somewhere if you go back through the archives, sorry. But for me, what's interesting is the way that music has changes culture. and how the promotion of very aggressive hip hop culture that changed from positive messages born out of street culture to very aggressive criminal kind of lyrics, which you saw in hip hop. And what you're seeing now with young girls and boys is music which is sexualizing them, and how that kind of is, to me, again, shifting and creating the paradigm of how they want society to be. That was a big statement rather than a question. Sorry, Mark.
No worries. Well, that's certainly happened with hip hop, and I've spoken on many occasions about the instigation of this genre that was known as gangster rap that came in sort of towards the end of the 1980s. And I've mentioned that many years ago, before I woke up in inverted commas and I was still a DJ out there playing all this stuff, I would have defended all that. And I would have said there's no way that music can actually affect people's behaviors. That's just ridiculous to suggest. But I was coming from a place of ignorance then, because I'd done zero research into it. And this is always the problem. People spout opinions all over the bloody place without having done an ounce of research of their own. And when you've actually taken the time and trouble to do the research, you realize how ridiculous some of these statements were that you yourself may have made. So I've come to understand that absolutely music can change people's behaviors and attitudes, particularly young people, because it's always impressionable young people who are so much easier to shape and mold, that are in the crosshairs of these people that roll out these agendas. So with hip hop, they introduced all these aggressive lyrics, glorifying criminal lifestyles, and it had the desired effect, which was to coerce large numbers of young people, predominantly young black males, into emulating the lifestyles that were being portrayed by their favorite rap artists on these tracks. And it's been admitted to from certain factions in the industry that that was the aim, because the record industry at the time was working in cahoots with the private prison industry in America, and they were sharing their profits. So it was in the interests of those who controlled the record labels to put out music that ensured lots of young black males were getting locked up in the private prison industry, so that everyone concerned could make an absolute killing from the money that was to be made from all the cells being full, so that absolutely was a thing.
Mark, and can you just touch on, sorry to interrupt, you've got to be quick around here, can you just touch on the John Todd Collins interview and what that was about?
Sure. There was this guy that went by the name of John Todd, but he was also known as Lance Collins, and he appears to have been a part of this long-running generational bloodline of occultists and witches, the Collins family. And he was put to use in the American record industry in the 1970s. He worked for a company called Zodiac Productions, and that had affiliations with many of the major record labels in the 1970s. And in a famous monologue that he gave, which you can get on YouTube, you can listen to him talking about this in his own words. He mentioned that Zodiac Productions was connected to Lloyd's of London and JP Morgan Bank and Standard Oil. Those are the sort of companies that were bankrolling it. They're all in it together. And he said that his job was to manage all these different record acts. And he spoke about this standard ritual which used to take place in the record industry, whereby all the major labels of the time would have what they referred to as a temple room in their corporate HQ. And he said they would bring in the master tape of a new album that they wanted to put out in the days of analog tape, and they would wheel in a coven of witches. This is what he says in his own words. And these witches would stand around the master tape, which they would place on an altar, and they would imbue it with a spell or a hex. And the idea is that some of the signature energy of the spell, that dark negative energy, would attach itself to the tape on an energetic level, because everything in creation is made up of sound and light frequency, basically on an unseen level when you get beyond the physical. And, the energetic signature of an implied will or intent can indeed attach itself to, an item in that way. So the idea was that every time a copy was made of that tape and an album went out into the general public, it would carry some of that sort of spell or hex that had been cast on it. So, like I say, this is this guy saying that this is what went on.
And it goes further than
other
that,
examples.
doesn't it?
There have been many other examples of this. Yeah.
The guy chopping up chopping up little slivers of the master recording or whatever it was and putting it into the actual album covers.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Well,
Who
this
was
is
that?
Dave Grohl. This is Dave Grohl of the Foo Fighters.
Ah,
So
that's right.
a few years ago, that group put out an album and they hit upon the brilliant marketing gimmick of mastering it on analog tape, because these days it's all done by a computer. But Dave Grohl said he wanted to go back to basics, master it on a reel-to-reel tape machine in his garage. And then they hit upon the idea of chopping up the tape once the album had been mastered and putting a tiny little shard of tape into each of the jewel cases of the CD copies of this album that would go out there. And on the surface of it, you might think, oh, that's a neat little trick, that's just a cute little gimmick. But if there's any truth to what John Todd spoke about in terms of bad energy being able to attach itself to master recordings, then is it possible that there could have been an ulterior motive at play here in terms of getting this stuff out into people's homes?
And just on that note, I mean, it always sort of struck me as weird. When I was a kid, you had to buy the album and you had to do this and the other, and then they brought out tape to tapes, and then the internet came along, and now you can literally stream films that are in the cinema at the moment. Apologies, it's pissing down with rain here. Don't know if
It is here too.
Yeah.
Bloody England.
Snap.
Yeah, we love it, don't we? But that was my question. Do you think that's the reason why we have films and music so readily available and free now? All right, they tell you copyright, yada yada. Anyone can get hold of any bit of music they want for absolutely free, and it would make sense that if there was something embedded in that music that was a message or a feeling that they wanted to get out there, then that's the perfect way to do it.
Well, that's right. Everything is readily available now. And it used to be the case that to be a DJ, you had to have access to record company mailing lists and to know which import shops to go to. And you'd spend all day hunting through these obscure records that had just come in from America, because that was the only way to stay on top of your game and have tunes that nobody else did. But of course, that's all gone now, because any kid in his bedroom can download any track that's ever been recorded if they know where to look. And the whole of culture has just been weaponized. And I was going to make a really profound point there, and I've forgotten what it was.
Well, let me wait for you then, because I liken it to their No, I've gone completely.
You see, we all know that feeling. That's empathy.
I was going to talk about the Beatles and Fall and ego deaths and everything, but no, and relate it even back to Flat Earth, but it's cocked up on me.
Whilst you guys,
he's found it, Adam.
Oh, come on, go on, Mark.
No, I'm still trying to remember the point. Just recap on the question, and I'll remember the point.
No, we'll have all forgotten that now.
Forgotten the question.
Oh shit! Now you've done it. The question was: is that why it's free? Is that because there's something embedded in the music and the films that they inherently want us to
right
adopt?
Okay, I've remembered my profound point, which was so everything now is done electronically and digitally. Music is delivered in digital fashion. And it's interesting to me that you have this process of creating MP3s, which is where you take a master file like a WAV, where you've got the full frequency range, all the information is there in the file, and you can stick it into something like iTunes and create an MP3. And what that process actually does is strip away a whole load of information which is deemed indiscernible to the human ear. So when you hear the MP3, to your mind, it sounds exactly the same as the original track, but there's a whole load of data that's been stripped out, but you don't notice. So if there's data being stripped out of a recording that you don't notice, it follows that there could also be stuff being stripped in that you don't notice either. And, I'm quite suspicious of the fact that everything is done by sound frequencies these days. And I'm convinced there's a lot of subliminal programming which is happening under the radar by stuff which is being stripped into these digital recordings. So it suits the master occultists that run these industries very much that things are all now done digitally, because I'm convinced there's all kinds of dark sorcery going on a sonic level.
Oh, you're a musician, aren't you? And with that in mind, we have a friend of the show, a guy called Norbs, and we're talking about how music can not only just subliminal stuff within there, but actually the frequency that the the music is presented at. I don't know if you're aware of any of his work, 432 or.
Yeah, is that for me? Yeah.
Yeah. Are you aware of any of his work and whatever the 432 frequency is?
Well, absolutely.
thoughts
Yeah,
on
I've
it?
covered this majorly. Actually, this comes up in every single question and answer that I ever do. Whenever I do a public talk and I open it up to questions at the end, there is always a question about 432 versus 440 hertz.
I'm
People
bloody
seem
predictable.
people
That's
seem
why I
Awesome
wasn't
to
going to
know
talk
that
about
it's
it.
really
that
interested in knowing about
prevalent
this.
out there.
I've prepared a few notes on this because I had a feeling it would come up, and it is discussed at length in my current book, Musical Truth Volume 2. I'm just going to read a few excerpts from it because it makes the point better than I can if I try and remember it. So let me just read these few lines. So I've said, for many years, the standard tuning pitch was set at A equals 432 hertz, where the musical note A vibrates at that frequency and all subsequent notes come in proportional accordance. Musicians and audiophiles alike agreed that this was a natural harmonic frequency and an obvious choice. In 1917, however, attempts were made by America's Rockefeller Foundation, those nice people, to change the pitch to A equals 440 hertz. This failed to gain any ground at the time, so a second attempt was made towards its instigation at the start of World War II. An international conference held in London in 1939 recommended that A equals 440 be adopted. This decision perplexed musicologists who maintained that 440, described as equal temperament or concert tuning, was anything but the sensible choice that 432, known as just intonation, was. 432 is said to synchronize with the rhythms of human brainwaves, the rest of nature, and with the frequency of the earth itself. And music performed to that pitch is thought to therefore have healing or at the very least soothing and calming properties. 440, in contrast, was thought disturbing and dissonant on an unseen level, with music performed at that pitch having unsettling effects on those exposed to it. So it would appear that 440 was deliberately chosen to cause distress and unease among listeners who, of course, would be completely unaware that the music is affecting them in that way. And it really wouldn't have been too difficult to keep 432 as the standard pitch had the controllers of these industries had humanity's best interests at heart. There's a bloody novelty, eh?
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? But let me take a small break there just to say to anyone listening, and if anyone's interested in knowing anything further about these subjects, Mark's written 2 volumes on this called Musical Truth, Volume 1 and 2, and there's a third one on the way. That's right, Mark, isn't it?
Well, at some point there will be, yeah. It's unavoidable. This is my life now.
It's not bad though, is it, mate? You wouldn't have predicted
Well,
it 10 years ago, but I'll tell you what, I wouldn't swap it. It's a pain in the arse sometimes. But...
Here we are on a Friday night, and it's pissing down with rain, as you say, outside. And 10 years ago, I'd have been on my way to a gig now. I'll be in the car with records in the boot, and I'll be off to some club, and I'll be there till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning playing tunes and getting back about 5 o'clock in the morning. And instead, here I am in my dressing gown with a drink, on the line to you lot, talking about whatever the hell we're talking about tonight.
Right.
So
Good
how things have
lad.
changed.
Good
Who would have
lad.
thought it would turn out like this?
I'm not sure where I pressed mute there along the way, but I hopefully I mentioned Musical Truth Volume 1 and 2 and your website, markdevlin.co.uk, and you YouTube Mark Devlin TV. Sorry,
Right.
Mark Devlin TV.
Yep.
Anywhere else we can get you? There was something here, a Spreaker. What on earth is that?
Well, John, rather than you keep killing it, Mark, do you want to do it properly? Do you want to give yourself a shout out, mate, where people can find you? Because I think there's a lot of info that you've got and do that'd be great for people who weren't aware of you to
Sure.
Use.
All right, so I've got my books, Musical Truth Volumes 1 and 2, which are available on Amazon. But if anyone wants to get a copy from me direct and cut Amazon out of the picture, then I'm happy to do that, and I can mail books to anywhere in the world. You just got to drop me an email to markdevlinuk@gmail.com, and we can arrange payment by PayPal or something. So then my main website is markdevlin.co.uk, markdevlin.co.uk. My YouTube, as you just said, is youtube.com/markdevlintv. And Spreaker is where I host all my podcasts and all my audio content. So I've got my Good Vibrations podcast, which is conversation based like this. Then I've got my Sound of Freedom conscious music podcast, which is music which goes completely against the grain of all the corporate fodder that's put out there. It's music
you
by...
are segueing into my question with that, Mark.
Excellent. This is music by real artists that are putting across meaningful messages and treating music the way it should be, as an outlet for, true art. And there's a few of them.
So there are some white hats out there.
There's a few of them out there. You have to look very hard to find them. You'll never find them by turning on your radio or your TV or going down your local club. You have to hunt and dig, but it's all out there. And my Sound of Freedom show is a showcase where I bring together many of these artists and lots of this music and put it out there for people to get all in one place. Some great music still being made, but you just wouldn't know it.
Well, I'm definitely heading over there because I need some. I am a music fan. I'm a musician. I love music. I've been immersed in it my whole life. And it's something I've always prided myself. I guess because, rooting for the underdog, whatever. Once radio became so stereotyped and just boxed up, and there was so many, categories, and when I grew up, I could listen to one station and hear every genre of music, from the blues to R&B to rock to old 50s, and it was all on one station. That all changed mid 70s, late 70s. So I just quit listening to radio and started looking for my own people, my own music, my own things that spoke to me. And it always had to speak to me at a very spiritual level, a very creative level, a very artistic level, technical, all of that. And rarely was any of that being presented on the radio. In fact, it seemed to be the very antithesis of what was on the radio. It was not working out at all listening to the radio for me. So I dug and found groups that to me were speaking something to all of this, trying to say some truth, trying to say some what's going on behind the scenes. But inevitably, even before I found about the 432 or Flat Earth or any of these things that have really opened my eyes, they always would just let me down in some way. Some song would come out with some, terrible lyrics or some dribble, commercialized, aimed for the radio crap. Every band, eventually it felt like sold out. I don't know. It just speaks to that whole idea of maybe they do get into the industry with the talent and the drive to bring truth and bring a meaningful thing. And because of these rituals and these people that are in the way to block all the good, there's just no way to get that out there. Or is there possibly a few that have made it through and gotten those messages out, and that's why they've been killed?
Yeah. You get differing views on this depending on who you speak to. So there's some people that will state that many artists start out with good intent. They want to just put their music out and they've got messages to convey. And when they make it big, they hit a certain level, they come up against the true nature of the industry and they're controlled from that point on one way or another. Then there's other more suspicious, cynically minded researchers like me who tend to think that any artist that's elevated to any kind of prominent position is in full knowledge of what they're doing and is, part of the agenda. So the jury's kind of out on whether that's a hard and fast rule. I think there's certainly two leagues. There's the likes of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, to use them as examples once again. And I would suggest that right from the start, those groups were in full knowledge of what it was they were going to be used for. There's plenty of speculation that both of them were connected to the Tavistock Institute, and Mick Jagger came out of the London School of Economics, of course, and then became a bloody rock star. So that's hardly a natural career path. And then I think you've got other groups that show a certain amount of talent and skill off their own back, and this gets noticed by the spotters in the industry, and they think, wow, this group influences people, so we need to get them on side so that they're putting out the kind of messages that we want to get put out there. And so these groups are made an offer and they're brought into the fold. And before they know what it is they've got themselves embroiled in, it's too late to leave. So there's different ways that these people come into the industries. There's the lifetime actors as well, of course, the people that are born into these families. We mentioned Jim Morrison and his dad earlier. So there's plenty of examples of musicians who are born into key bloodlines and they're given these roles. They're just told, you're going to be an influential musician and you're going to use your art to change societal attitudes. And there's been countless examples of that over the decades.
On that
Absolutely.
subject of the Laurel Canyon sort of military intelligence side of things, I mean, I've heard a lot of the Jim Morrison and the Doors and his father being Gulf of Tonkin responsible. What are some other examples of military intelligence in the sort of Laurel Canyon or even modern day bands and figures?
Well, there's all kinds. There's loads coming out of Laurel Canyon, the story that was told by Dave McGowan, which really set me on this style of research into starting to look into the backgrounds of some of these people. So out of Laurel Canyon, you had the likes of Frank Zappa. His father was involved in chemical bioweapons research. You've got John Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas. His father was a career military man. Most of those musicians coming out of that scene were, Joni Mitchell and bloody all the members of the Byrds, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, all those kind of groups. Then you can look at different genres like punk and new wave. The punk scene is absolutely infested with family connections into the CIA and the Pentagon and the White House and the Defense Department and different aspects of the military, the Navy, the Army, the Marines, like you wouldn't believe. There's a big punk scene that grew up out of Washington, D.C., so it's just on the doorstep of the friggin' Pentagon and the rest of it. You know, all these bands coming out of that one area. There's the classic story of the Copeland family, of course, which I tell in all my public talks. There was this career CIA officer, legendary in intelligence circles, by the name of Miles Copeland, and he had 3 sons who were all put to use in the music industry. Miles Copeland Jr., Ian Copeland, and Stuart Copeland, who people know as the drummer with the group The Police. And so they had a major stranglehold over many of the artists that emerged out of the punk and new wave scene, both in the US and the UK. And they had all these companies through which they would promote these bands. And they gave the companies names whose initials spell out the truth of, what that family was all about. They had Copeland International Artists, CIA. They had Frontier Booking International, FBI. They had International Record Syndicate, IRS. And then they had the group The Police, with Sting, as in Sting Operation. So it's not as if there was any shortage of clues as to what they were all about. And then, you can go into every genre, look at hip hop, even reggae. Bob Marley's father, Norvell Sinclair Marley, was a British naval officer for a time. And he ran a plantation in Jamaica. And then Bob Marley comes out.
On that one, guys, are you talking about is that why Bob Marley died of smoking cannabis through cancer?
He didn't. He died.
Didn't. He died from a prick in his toe that a CIA agent gave him.
Yeah, that's right.
Shoot a try.
I'm not saying that. I'm
Baker.
saying one of the urban myths, certainly I remember, is Bob Marley died of cancer, and all you ever see is him smoking weed. And whether that's just being...
It was Danny Baker, Adam. He had a sort of charity match with Danny Baker, that hideous radio bloke.
That paragon of truth and virtue.
The point I'm making, really, with regards to its validity, is it's clearly out there in the public psyche that, all right, it's in my head. I didn't invent it on my own. Do you know what I mean? I've heard that somewhere. And again, you're alluding there to how everything is controlled. We talk about and this stuff with regards to how history's controlled, but some of the stuff you're saying is like there. That's why I jumped in, because actually it's a bit of a slap.
I am alluding to that, and people are going to disagree clearly, and people must make of it what they will. I've thrown myself into this research, and I see patterns and trends emerging. And people often say, well, when it comes to the Laurel Canyon crowd, of course you'd find fathers that were involved in the military because they had the draft back then, and loads of guys joined the military. Well, yes, they did. But what you find with these musicians is the fathers were, in almost all cases, very high-ranking military officials, generals, admirals, that kind of thing. You're not finding rank and file foot soldiers here. You're finding very key figures. And when you find this happening time and time again in different genres, in different decades all over the world, it really does start to go beyond just one of those things or coincidence. It does to my mind anyway. I mean, the Bob Marley thing is a total enigma because you've got the possibility that Bob was rebelling against his father and that he was genuine through his music. I've always loved his music, and I always considered him to be a very sincere individual, very consciously awakened. And maybe he was, but you've still got this anomaly of that's who his father was. And his son, Ziggy Marley, whose real name was David, moved to Israel some years ago. And he seems to be very much in with the Zionist regime of Israel. He's given Hebrew names to all of his kids and plays concerts in Tel Aviv and stuff like that. Whereas you might think the son of a conscious artist would not want anything to do with that kind of regime. So these are all anomalies. That's all tied in with the Rastafarian religion, of course, which has links to Judaism and stuff. But it's a real head scratcher. And people say that about Jim Morrison as well. They will say, oh, well, he was probably just rebelling against his father. He used to say in interviews that his parents were dead when they clearly weren't. We've just got straight rebellion here. Well, if it really was just one or two cases, you could argue that that's what was going on. But when you find it time and time again with all these family connections, it starts to become very suspicious. It does to a world-weary, jaded, individual like me.
What strikes me, mate, is the people that you're mentioning, and you know, if we were talking about S Club 7 or Take That or whatever in terms of control and stuff, but it's really, I'm really taking note in terms of the evidence you're citing and the names you're saying, those that people would think are those associated, as you say, with the freedom movement. Actually, you're saying is still quite clearly has links to the controlled narrative.
Well, they do. And the likes of S Club 7 never influenced culture in the way the likes of Bob Marley and Jim Morrison and all these people did. It's also social movements that we think of on the surface as being benign and for the people. So the feminist movement that came out of the 1960s, spearheaded to a large extent by Gloria Steinem, which was all about supposedly the emancipation of females and getting them into the workplace and making them the equals of their male counterparts. That appears to be all about equality for females, right? So that's all good. But when you get down to the true nature of what that agenda was, which is all about getting females into the workplace and contributing to the taxation system so that there's that much more income for the IRS. And then you've got females going out to work and putting their kids into state-sponsored childcare. So you're breaking up the traditional family unit and the nurturing role of mothers. So that's what that social engineering exercise was all about. And then you come to realized that Gloria Steinem was a CIA asset in the employ of the CIA. So you think, oh, well, I guess that movement wasn't all we thought it was then. And we get this with so many things, that whole hippie counterculture scene.
I was just going to ask, what about the psychedelic movement? Because I wanted to go on to that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. On the surface, that would appear to be all about anti-establishment, anti-war sentiment. It would appear to be all about young people unplugging from the system and discovering love and peace and disavowing themselves from war and all this kind of thing. But then you look at many of the key figures that got that whole scene going, like Dr. Timothy Leary and Ken Kesey and his Merry Pranksters and the Grateful Dead, who were very much the poster child group for that whole generation. Well, the Grateful Dead's personnel are absolutely infested with links to Bohemian Grove, Skull and Bones, and the CIA. And the road manager for the Grateful Dead for some time was a guy by the name of Alan Trist, whose father, Eric Trist, was one of the founding members of the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations in London, which is a think tank connected with social engineering and changing societal attitudes. So now you've got some questions about how genuine and grassroots that entire hippie counterculture scene was, particularly when you factor in all these bands and all the military connections there. So if one or two fads and trends of movements were contrived and not all we thought they were, maybe it's the case with all of them. And maybe it warrants some research into all these different major social movements that we've had.
Well, I don't know about you, Mark, but with the psychedelic stuff, I wasn't around back in the 60s or whatever, just missed that one. But what I did see was a resurgence around, well, it came on my horizon around sort of 2007. There was a massive resurgence, and they renamed them from psychedelics to entheogens, and it changed into this into something else. And again, I know you've avoided psychedelics and entheogens, as have I. Do you think it was some sort of, or is some sort of trap, a tool, or a weapon? Because that's what really I mean, I was right into it. I was growing the mushrooms. I had all the entheogens that you could think of, but I never took any of them because I was quite cynical about, well, doing the research into Leary and that sort of thing. You know, there was a small possibility that this was a trap. What do you think?
You've got to ask yourself why the establishment would have any kind of vested interest in large numbers of people taking psychedelics or entheogens if they were all about personal upliftment and going to amazing conscious places, journeys of conscious exploration. Certainly, there would appear to be that aspect to it. So I know a lot of people that have done psychedelics, hallucinogenics over the years, and they've told me that they've had nothing but positive experiences from it. A lot of people say that they woke up to great truth, and they're now on the path to researching all this good stuff as a result of taking those products, those compounds. And I've no doubt that they had those positive applications in their lives. But for every person that you meet with a story like that, you'll also meet someone with a horror story about how these things have screwed up their lives. They've led to psychosis or schizophrenia or memory loss. It seems to be the same kind of thing as the different reactions people have to certain diets. So you'll have some people who can go from eating meat to being a full vegan with absolutely no problems at all. They make that transition smoothly. You'll then have other people that have eaten meat all their lives that attempt a vegan diet, and they will tell you that they suffered horrendous health problems as a result. Maybe they weren't doing it properly, but either way, their transition was anything but the smooth one that somebody else's was. And it seems to be the same with these drugs, So I don't deny that there are personal conscious benefits to be had from ingesting these things. Like you said, I've never done them myself. That's mainly because I just like being in control of things, and I've always thought that I've just never liked the idea of going somewhere where I don't have control.
The drugs don't affect the personal development or the changes. They're a conduit. They're a shortcut in many cases towards personal development, but the desire for the personal development needs to be there. They're not most importantly, they're not a necessity for the personal development, but they are in many cases, and quite rightly described, they are quite a useful shortcut to these things if used properly. Obviously anything abused, alcohol,
exactly. I can't tell you the number of people I know who dropped acid and tried to go to a movie or tried to go to a public event. That's not the way. It's all about set and setting. And
but I think the point here is
your readiness for it.
The terms on which people take these things, these psychedelics, hallucinogenics, call them what you will, entheogens. If it's somebody going on a personal journey of discovery and, just going through this process for themselves, that's an entirely different scenario to when it happens on a communal or group basis. So what you had in the 60s was you had all these music festivals and all these hippie communes and hangouts and stuff, and much of the LSD that was present at these events was being distributed by the CIA. There's documentation to prove this. It's no longer speculation. It's absolutely evidential.
Oh, right. Absolutely.
CIA was putting this stuff out. So then you can take it forward to the situation we had in the UK, and I've done a lot of work on this and a lot of interviews and public talks. The acid house, the birth of the rave dance music scene in the UK, coming out of the late 80s, going into that rave scene of the very early 90s. On this scene, the LSD had been replaced by MDMA, ecstasy. And so you had kids, getting together in their huge numbers and all doing this stuff and listening to music and being exposed to all these strobe lights and things like that. Now, when it's happening in a group setting like that, it's not an individual experience, it's a collective experience. And if you're at a rave or some kind of festival where you've got images being beamed up onto a huge screen, and you've got music, sound frequency, all on a digital sort of electronic level being absorbed, and you've got large numbers of people all having their brain chemistry altered by being on the same drug, now you've got an entirely different scenario because it's on somebody else's terms. Some other party is dictating the kind of experience that all these people are having. It's no longer individual. And that's where the concern lies, I think. So, you know, the desire with flooding the market with these products, whether it's LSD or ecstasy or these other drugs that have come along from time to time, is to try and get them experienced in a group type situation like this, rather than have individuals discovering these things for themselves on their own terms. They want it on their terms, not on any individual's terms.
So
That's-
when you talk about that, Mark, then that puts the DJ in quite a powerful position. And what I was going to ask was, do you think any, or do you know of any DJs that proverbial or literally sold their soul to the devil? Have you ever been offered?
Well, John, can I just,
never had.
Mark, I was a child of that era, so particularly in the early 90s, indulged in that. That was a chapter of my life.
Sure.
And I would concur. I mean, there were certain DJs you'd go to for the experience that they would give you, and I suppose that's the skill of the job. Now that for me was enhanced in that era. A couple of Red Bulls and a shitload of vodka now does it a little bit, to be fair. But I'm getting older, you know. But do you get my point? I think there is immense control in the input that you guys give us in that altered state. Actually, you can lift me from a somber state to absolute euphoria.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing with DJs as you get with musicians. I spoke earlier about how you get certain individuals that are pushed up through the ranks and they become the influential ones that drive the culture. And it's absolutely the same with DJs. So I've never been anywhere near that top league, and thank God for it, because I spent many years wanting to be on BBC Radio 1 or 1 Extra or one of these high profile stations. And I used to get very frustrated that I was always sending up my demo tapes and always hassling them and saying they should get me on their station, and they kept knocking me back. They just weren't interested. At the time, I took it as a personal slight, you know, but now I realize it was my greatest blessing. What a bloody nightmare that would have been to have got involved with that at that level of things. So
Hell
now
yeah.
you've got the superstar DJs, the likes of David Guetta and Tiesto, Armin van Buuren, Paul van Dyk, Steve Aoki, Calvin Harris, Pete Tong, Paul Oakenfold, Carl Cox, these kind of guys. And it's clear that these are the Pied Pipers of their scenes. They are absolutely driving where this whole culture goes. You can have somebody like David Guetta up on stage in front of 50 to 100,000 people, because these events, these festivals take place on a huge scale now. And this is reflected in the DJ's salaries. Guys like Guetta can reportedly earn upwards of £50,000 per gig for 2 hours work. Nice work if you can get it, right? But all a guy like that has got to do is stand up there at his podium. And I've likened this to a sort of religious altar, because many of these dance festivals are like religious gatherings. You got the crowd down there, it's like the religious congregation. Then you got the DJ up at the DJ booth, which is like an altar, and he's like the priest conducting the crowd. And all he's got to do is wave his hands in the air or put his arms up in a Christ-like messianic pose, which you see guys like Guetta doing all the time. And he can control 50,000 people to mimic that action and do the exact same thing. Then he can start clapping his hands along with the tune, and 50,000 people will start clapping along with him. That's an incredible amount of influence for one individual to have over such a large throng of people. And we've never really seen that before.
Do you think it's another example of, because I mean that's current, and like I say, I was early 90s when I was going out enjoying myself like that, and it was a very different environment back then. And I just wonder whether what you see is natural human creation, and then as soon as it is recognized as having some significance in society, the machine adopts it for its own purposes.
Yeah. That's a very good question. It's one that I've spent a lot of time reflecting on when it comes to the UK dance music scene that grew up out of the roots of acid house. I'm still not able to ascertain with any direct proof that this whole scene occurred from the very outset at the hands of military intelligence or any kind of nefarious input.
Mate, I met my wife for the first 3-4 months, stood next to her, maybe offering her a bottle of water every now and again, but smiling and that. And it was a very, very, very different culture to what I see it is now for the youth of when I was that age. You know what I mean? That it seems to be.
It seems to have organic, innocent roots, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah. I think we were lucky enough, Adam, to be at the age where we caught the early crest when it was still an organic thing. Because all my experiences in all these realms have been positive.
Well, with that in mind, the final point with it is, I would suggest that people of the 60s era would have stated the same. Yet we can look back and look at the chemical components of both MDMA and LSD and see their synthetic origin.
Well, they do. I speak to
and their military use.
I know guys in their 60s and 70s that were there in the 60s in the midst of that whole thing. And many of them are still in denial. They will swear till their dying day that whole scene was pure and organic, even though there's evidence to show that there was massive input from the intelligence agencies. And I think that there's certainly some input from some shady sort of organizations when it comes to the acid house rave scene. It's not as obviously documentable as the 60s scene. But the question is whether it started out as innocent and organic and was steered off in certain desired directions once it had gained momentum, or whether it was, controlled from the start. And it's still a question that I'm trying to answer, to be perfectly honest with you. I speculate on it in the book. It's a very difficult one to answer. If anyone's got any direct documentary proof that these scenes were controlled from the very start, I would love to see it. The reason I've got my suspicions is because it's happened so many times before with so many other scenes, and I just cannot accept that a culture that has affected so many people and has become so influential would have been allowed to have flourished under its own steam, and gone off its own directions.
I've got to ask then, Mark.
The controllers that we have don't allow that kind of thing to happen, and that's why I've got my suspicions about it.
Well, in that exact vein, then I've got to ask, what are your thoughts on the flat Earth? Has that been controlled from the start? Was it a release? Was it a grassroots stumbling upon thing? I'm in the camp that it was released and it was timed, but I think I'm in the minority on that front. But I'd be interested to know what your research has pointed at.
Right. Well, the controllers that we have, who are dark occultists when we get down to it, they are practitioners of sorcery and black magic and occult ritual. There's so much evidence to show that this is the case. They have a very good understanding of the human psyche, and they seem to understand how humanity responds to certain stimulants and certain situations. So it's not too much of a stretch, as far as I'm concerned, to think that they would have known that if they had released information regarding the Earth being flat, which challenged the official narrative that we've all been entrained in through our lives, it would have led to a massive rift between people, and it would cause huge division, and it would pit friend against friend, brother against brother. And they would have been absolutely right, because we've all seen that happen, right? So I think there would have been foreknowledge of the type of reaction that would happen were they to release this kind of information as some kind of psyop. So I think it's perfectly possible that there is a psyop aspect to it. and that they had an interest in trying to divide the so-called truth movement and get people arguing about all this stuff to divert them from other things that are going on, and also to just break up any kind of unity that might have been there before.
Yeah.
Because there's people I don't speak to now over this issue because we disagree on this stance. It's not me cutting them off, it's them cutting me off.
Yeah.
And we've all seen posts from people saying, if you believe in flat earth, get the fuck off my Facebook page. You're no friend of mine.
Well, it just makes me wonder, you know, whether they're trying to divide and conquer. So, you know, they're releasing JFK and the moon landings, and they're just chucking out this conspiracy after conspiracy. And then finally, someone around the board table said, you know, we're going to have to do it. We're going to have to release the flat Earth because nothing so far has worked in terms of completely dividing religion, sex, creeds, everything.
Right.
You know, it's time for the H bomb or the F bomb of flat Earth, and yeah, I think
the mistake a lot of people seem to make is that they assume that the flat Earth thing is a psyop, so they assume there's no validity to it, and it must all be bullshit. But wouldn't it be a master stroke if they sort of cooked this whole thing up as a psyop and they controlled the narrative, but in actual fact, what the narrative is putting forward by way of information has validity? And if people would only look at the information, detach themselves from any kind of ulterior motives that might be involved, and actually look at the information, then it speaks for itself. I just do not understand how anyone who considers themselves open-minded can look at all the evidence for the place that we live not being a spinning ball hurtling through the infinite vacuum of space. And, you know, they just can't see that versus the traditional narrative that we've all been handed all our lives through what? Through mainstream media, state-sponsored education, government departments, Royal Society, scientific groups and individuals. That would be a bit of a red flag, wouldn't it, for people that understand how this world is run and how everything else is a lie and everything else is disinformation to disempower us and keep us away from truth. Why would it be any different with this one? So if people would only look at the information and just treat it on its own merits, then you come to the tantalizing possibility that we may have a psyop in place, but the psyop may be valid.
Well,
I'll tell
also
you, John,
that we hold on.
Also,
sorry, that we may have a psyop in place, but we as the people may be able to make that psyop backfire. And if we can do what you just said, look at some evidence with a rational mind, then it may have started off as a psyop, but we may be able to flip it in terms of creating that unity and the us against them. We're the ones that we see your spinning ball bullshit, and now we're asking for your explanations, and we're not standing for it anymore. So that's where I hope it will go. But over to you, Adam.
all I was going to say was I was just going to draw a slight. We were talking about the development of the club scene, and I'd just draw a slight analogy, and that's like, certainly for me now, Mark, it still feels like 1990, early 90s, with us hiring out a nightclub and mates doing the mix. I couldn't make the shit. But I could stand on I could stand on the speaker and dance, mate. I could do that. That was I was like the Bez of the of things. Right. Do you know what I mean? But it's still, for me, the flat Earth scene. It doesn't feel. It feels very organic still at this stage. It does. There are obviously the accusations people throw out at certain individuals, rightly or wrongly. But, for me, it still feels a very grassroots thing that seems to have been, however it's been implanted into us, it does seem to be organic to me, not necessarily at the stage yet where we have the 100,000 seater stadiums and the message is very unified. Part of the pleasure of flat Earth is no one agrees, even as guys here, we don't have the same opinion, and that's part of the beauty of the journey.
You might be right, man. You know, I can't say for definite one way or the other, and that goes for most things, to be honest. I tend not to be someone that will make an outrageous statement and then stick to it like concrete. You know, I'm very fluid and flexible in things. Certainly, my stance on the Paul McCartney thing has changed over time, and I've been open about that. So yeah, you could be absolutely right in terms of where the flat Earth thing came from. I don't have any attachment either way to it being a psyop or it being organic, but all I see is that there's validity to the information, and it's changed my perspective on things.
Yeah, I agree with that. Mark, on that note, we've got to talk about Fall, Beatles, because you have a different take on things, don't you?
Before we do, guys,
Well,
can we just
yeah.
double check that? I think Josh has actually joined us. Are you there, Josh?
I am here.
Oh, say hello,
Sorry,
mate. Say hello.
Sit in rapt attention. No,
Welcome along, man.
Mark. Yeah, I finally made it home. I said, "F it, I can get my car later. I got more important things to do." I got Mark Devlin sitting on a line at my
It's
house.
9/11. You had to be here.
I had to be here. I absolutely had to be here. So priorities are set. Car will be dealt with tomorrow.
All right, that's a good priority there. So yeah, McCartney, he crops up in every bloody conversation I do. My stance on him has changed slightly, yes, because in the first book that I put out, Musical Truth Volume 1, I recounted the whole legend that has come to be known as PID, Paul is dead. And this is kind of a conspiracy theory within the conspiracy world. And it states that the real Paul McCartney died in a car accident sometime in 1966, and the date is often given as 9/11 of 1966, but there tends to be disagreement over whether that represents September 11th or the 9th of November, 9/11, depending on whether you're going with American or British date formats. But anyway, the idea is that the rest of the Beatles and Brian Epstein and the forces that control them worked to cover this whole thing up, and they hired a replacement, an imposter, to play the role of Paul McCartney so that the public would be none the wiser. And that's the individual we have to this day. Then there's a sort of slightly sinister take on that whole thing, which was that Paul's car accident was no random tragic accident, but that it was planned for, or it might not have been a car accident at all, but he was taken out and it was known that it was going to be coming, which gave time for this individual who we think of as Fall, and his name is often given as William Shepherd, aka Billy Shears, hence the may I introduce to you the one and only Billy Shears on the Sgt. Pepper album. He's supposed to be the guy that took over the role. So I bought into that for quite some time because it was quite a standard thing to do so when you get into this area of research. But over time, this whole McCartney enigma has just absolutely captivated me, and it's taken up so many weeks and months of my life that I'll never get back, that I just feel more convoluted and confused about the whole thing than ever now. I've reached a point where I've accepted that there's actually no verifiable evidence that Paul McCartney ever actually died in 1966. However, I do not accept that there has been just one Paul McCartney all these years. It's pretty clear to me now, looking at photos and video footage from through the decades, so before 1966 and after, that what we see is not just one man, but certainly two, and probably more than two. And through much discussion with many other researchers in this field, and there's lots of disagreement there, let me tell you, not just in Flat Earth, but every single seasoned researcher that you'll meet in this subject area will have a slightly different take on things. But the general consensus among many of us is that there have been at least two Paul McCartneys. So we're left with the question of who these people are. Do we have the original biological Paul plus an imposter? Do we have, in fact, fraternal twins? It's been suggested that Paul might be one of twins, and that we've had this big joke played on us all these decades where they've been pushing one twin in and out of the Paul role and presenting him to us as Paul McCartney. And that's why they look slightly different from time to time. And there's all these anomalies in their appearances and their height and things that they say in interviews. Or do we have more than two? Because when you look at the photos again, you often find individuals that are said to be Paul McCartney that don't bear any visual resemblance to either of the other two. So it really is a mind F. Do we swear on this?
You certainly can. Absolutely,
can.
man.
All right. So,
I've gone quite a
so it's a
ways
mind
down.
fuck.
Yeah, I've gone quite a ways down this hole myself, Mark. And at this point, I'm almost convinced there could be up to 4 Paul McCartneys,
Exactly.
at least a couple of John Lennons.
Mm.
I doubt Ringo Starr played on any of the albums. I mean, I've seen all the different crazy rabbit holes on this stuff.
Right.
And certainly the gentlemen, I don't have any of my notes on this. I should have prepared better. But there's a guy performing today in this era, and he's doing the Beatles songs. He looks exactly like
Is this Mark Stacer? This guy?
That's him.
John
Thank
Lennon.
you. I could not get the Lennon guy. I'm so out of touch here with this.
There was a movie
Yes.
called Let Him Be
Absolutely.
in 2009.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be, according to some, it's present day John Lennon, who never actually died. So, boy, that's another whole bloody rabbit hole to fall down.
Exactly. Well, I
But
mean,
what-
to me, all this kind of
to
speaks
fall
all
down, get it?
these- Right. Go ahead.
No, just
All right. Well,
Yeah,
all
I
these
got it.
things speak to the different
pride comes before a
controls and
fall.
the MK Ultra type, shocks they throw into the media on like Lennon's death. I mean, the things that happened here in the States, I can't imagine what happened there in the UK the day he was shot.
Yeah.
The whole country went ape, and it was like an MK Ultra, like the assassination of Kennedy, the assassination of any of the leaders.
And let's not forget that George Harrison got stabbed up terribly in his home in late 1999. An intruder broke in somehow to this compound that he had near Henley-on-Thames, Friar Park, which was allegedly one of the most highly guarded houses anywhere in Britain, state-of-the-art security system and all that. But somehow,
Didn't his wife beat the guy's ass?
I'm not sure. I didn't hear that.
I
I
don't
know
know
she
that.
was like a something degree black belt. I know. And I
Right.
had heard that, his wife had been the one that actually defended him.
Well,
after he
maybe
was
that's what
stabbed.
saved George, because he was stabbed up multiple times, and it would appear to be an attempt at taking him out. A hit, just like on Lennon. Only this time he got all stabbed up instead of shot. But George survived that attack, although he died less than 2 years later of cancer, which was seemingly brought on by the whole affair. So
Not
you got
Danny
that aspect
Baker
to it.
again.
And just an observation to make about the McCartney situation, whether the original Paul died and was replaced, or whether we've got 2 individuals paging in and out of the role of Paul, this could not have taken place without the full complicity of British military intelligence, right? Because Paul has been knighted by the Queen, and anyone that comes into close contact with the royal family is supposed to get a thorough vetting from MI5
Right.
in terms of their affiliations and stuff. So if in some insane way a small closed group comprised of the Beatles and their immediate management had managed to pull off this trick, it would have been discovered at some point by British military intelligence, right? There's no way that could have flown under the radar. So the fact that we have more than one McCartney, which we do, proves that there is complicity there among the intelligence services. And this lends weight to the theory that the Beatles all along were connected with military intelligence and the Tavistock Institute and all this, and their role was to influence culture in line with social engineering agendas. Just wanted to make that point.
But what about Mark?
And they
what-
came. Oh, go ahead, John.
Oh, so I was just going to say, what about, yes, they had a huge influencing role and that was their role. But what about a secondary role was to introduce all this fall and falling down rabbit holes and spending immeasurable amounts of time and effort and everything into this distraction.
Right, absolutely. Look at us now, right?
Exactly.
Right. Well, you've got to consider that because, like I just said, the amount of man hours that I've wasted, well, I don't know if it's wasted, invested, you might say, but spent either way on looking at this thing just cannot be measured. And when you factor in all the other researchers around the world that look at this, I know people that study this full time. I get emails every single day from certain people saying, oh, look at this photo and I've discovered this snippet from an interview and stuff like that. They never stop looking at this.
Well,
and
like
yet, none of us,
JFK or Jack the Ripper even. I mean, from 1888. I mean, they're still
and we still don't know who
hammering
the guy
tongs.
was.
Yeah, well, I think we do, but well,
Well, as
yeah.
far as them being a manufactured product and being put in place when they were, I mean, it was perfect timing with the war and everything. Everybody was, marching and taking over colleges. And so, boom, here's this love, peace, harmony. Let's all chill. Kind of like I thought about it, and someone in chat, I think it was the Spirit of the Longthorn, was talking about how the ecstasy era kind of hit as the punk and the rebellion and the Rage Against the Machine music and all these anti-government, let's take it back, was really hitting the peak. And then boom, here comes the peace, love, let's all hug it out in the clubs scene.
Right. And the rave scene in the UK emerged in the middle of Thatcherism, or towards the end of Thatcherism. So there was all this angst and this anger at the unfairness of the Tory party and their regime and their hold over society. So it was seen to be in some way a rebellion against all of that. So the timing of these scenes and these movements is very interesting when you look at other things that were going on in society when they came along.
It just always seems to me, though, that most of the time when you're looking at things like conspiracy, that you're looking into the past, say Jack the Ripper or JFK or whatever. There's literally almost no way you can prove it whatsoever. And this is my cunning segue back to Flat Earth in terms of it is actually a conspiracy. It is something you can prove yourself with in terms of experimentation, probably the wrong word, but observation and that sort of thing. And to me, it seems the ultimate thing that they would be trying to hide, and they would bring up all these rabbit holes day after day in order to keep us away from the real truth, which is walk out your front door and look at the world around you rather than spending hours looking at JFK videos and reading all the books, and it just seems something quite logical now.
So
well, that's right. Yeah.
I hate to do this.
4 minutes.
We can push it, but this is break music coming in now, so we can push a break. But I know, Mark, you said you had to get to bed, that you're not much of the night owl these days.
Well, I'm not the night owl I used to be, but I can stick around for another segment if you'd like me to.
Absolutely. We would love that. We would love it, Mark. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll love it, Mark, because the next segment is an hour and a half long as well.
Well, maybe not all of it, but...
no, when you're ready to duck out, my friend, please do so. We appreciate all we get.
But yeah, we're sort of heading into the break, so I think it's customary, isn't it, to get all your details, your wwws and everything out of the way again, because I, for one, am going to go and get Musical Truth Volume 1 and 2 because I think it's fascinating stuff.
Ah, excellent. All right. So, yeah, both books are available on Amazon. If anyone wants to get them from me direct, signed copies, they can email me at markdevlinuk@gmail.com and we can sort that out. The website is markdevlin.co.uk. The YouTube is /MarkDevlinTV. All my conference talks and presentations are up on there, and my radio interviews. And I've got a Spreaker account, which is where I host all my podcast audio. And that's about it. And I just wanted to mention that you brought up Jack the Ripper there, and we got some more 9/11 synchronicity, because I mentioned in my first book that the date on which the final of Jack the Ripper's victims was found, or was said to be, just happened to be the 9th of November, 1888. So,
88.
Isn't that interesting that just came up in the conversation?
As Crow would say, count the ways in which all the numbers in that correlate together. Yeah.
And we were talking about the acid house scene there. And of course, the second Summer of Love was summer 1988, which is exactly 100 years after Jack the Ripper. So there's another one.
Well, maybe we can go into this in a bit more detail over on the other side of the break. But I've looked into Jack the Ripper, and I can't help thinking it's an absolute cover-up for a royal slasher of some sort, or a Masonic,
especially
satanic
after
ritual.
The book From Hell, the graphic novel, and the movie. That really convinced me it was all just a game when they fed it to us again like that.
But looking at
Winston Churchill's father's name always comes up in this research. If you come across
that's right.
So Randolph Churchill.
Yes,
Randolph
sir.
Churchill. And did you know that Winston Churchill was himself a Wiccan witch?
Yeah, I'd heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I thought that was quite interesting. Another forced hero, as you say.
Lifetime actor. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Josh, I think we're 50 seconds away.
Sounds good to me.
I'm
Adam?
all yours. I'm all yours, Josh. Whenever you want, I'll stick the TV on. The TV's on. Press play, guys. If you want to mute, and we'll see you in a few minutes.
Great. Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure. I could talk to you for hours. So, yeah.
Well, thank you, man. It's fun. The time is going very quickly.
See you after
Good
the
to
break.
hear. Good to hear.
All right. See you soon.
We're up pretty high, our heads are almost in the clouds, and their feet are chained to the ground with their chains of misery. They've got a hold of me, they won't let go of me. Let go of me. They might have gravity on their side, but something's pulling us high. Got the potential to fly. Don't let them be what holds you back from this one incredible chance. They're lucky to have had a glance at you. Are you defy gravity? They can be cruel and mean and a huge pain. Our heads are in the clouds now. Don't let them make it rain. A smile can be the sun they're missing out on their rainy day. They might have gravity on their side, but something's pulling us high. Got the potential to fly. Don't let them be what holds you back from this one incredible chance. They're lucky to have had a glance at you. Are you defy gravity? You defy gravity. They say we aren't strong enough. We don't have what it takes. I say yeah, they're wrong enough, and we'll show them someday. They might have gravity on their side, but something's pulling us high. Got the potential to fly. Oh yeah, don't let them be what holds you back from this one incredible chance. They're lucky to have had a glance at you. Are you defy gravity? You defy gravity. You defy gravity. Yeah, yeah. At you, are you defy gravity?
Are we there?
Are we off air?
Now we're back. We're back.
Fuck knows what I just posted there.
I don't know. It was a right
I posted
essay.
the whole chat. Oops.
Filled the whole screen. I don't know
Yeah,
what
it
it
was
said.
only meant to be one. Let me delete that.
We're live already?
No,
We're back.
I don't think we're live yet.
Oh no, I haven't stopped. I haven't stopped. I forgot.
I thought maybe you did forget.
I
You
did.
muppet.
That's
I
all
was
right.
singing along. I enjoyed myself to a bit of Gravity. So, have we got to stop now then?
Let's just keep.
Let's
going.
go.
Let's go. We'll stop it when Mark leaves.
You
Let's do-
see, you're disappearing. You're not being here, Josh. It's thrown me off kilter, mate. So
You've buggered my recording.
oh, right.
Anyway, I
I've
was
not-
just reading a few things out in the chat there. Mark is one of the most truthful researchers in Britain. There's a couple of others.
Oh, you're killing me.
Although
I'm just trying to read this thesis here. It's like
no, don't bother. I
An essay.
accidentally, I think I accidentally highlighted everything, and I was only meant to get that one bit, but I don't know how to delete it.
I'll look at that
I
tomorrow.
think that's my Saturday sorted. I'm going to be reading through all this.
Spirit of Longthorn Fam says, when you go down this hole, Beatles, Laurel Canyon, etc., it'll kill you, but I'm glad I did. And I thank Mark Devlin in part for a lot of this. X and Spirit of Longthorn says, Mark Devlin, thank you. You made an old man very happy and aware. Big love to you, brother. So, yeah, you're
All right.
getting some love from the chat.
Well, that's good. I don't always get love. I get rotten eggs and tomatoes some places I go. So it's
Well,
nice to absorb that love.
a little interesting side note, just, I'm not paranoid. But when we started the show, we had an unusually high number of viewers to start with, and I assume that was due to your name being in the description. Thank you, sir. And we had a huge number of thumbs down instantly for our show. We never get more than one or two. We had 12 instantly, and there were about 10 thumbs up. I literally sat here and watched the thumbs up disappear one by one, thinking you must have been talking about something that was pissing people off. But
Well,
I
I
actually
do
see people
try.
in chat asking the question, where did my thumbs up go? So
Excellent.
it seems like they're fucking with our numbers live, even as we're doing things.
Well, yeah, it's either that or, I usually try and piss everyone off. I don't discriminate. I try and get round to everyone.
Nice.
So if I've
nice.
if I've not denigrated your particular musical icon by the end of an interview, then I've not done the job properly. Right?
Right?
Mate, you're joining us for the second half. There's plenty of time yet. Don't worry.
We'll get them all.
All right.
Don't worry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
check this out, guys. I've been stuck at 666 subs
What else could it
over
be?
like a month and a half,
What else could it
and
be?
it says that I have 50 plus subs in the last 28 days.
I'm going to go and unsub you.
Fix that shit, right.
Yeah,
Do you
crazy.
see
I'll
these
get-
numbers?
Did you hear this story about Dave Grohl? Incidentally, we mentioned him in the first part of the show there, but
Yeah, Foo
just you
Fighters.
mentioning 666. Did any of you hear this story about him and the restaurant bill that he got?
Yes, I did.
I've
Did
not.
we talk about it on our show, Josh?
I don't think we did.
I dropped it in one of the mornings, though, to talk. Wait, the minute I got to it.
I don't think
Okay.
so. It's early, but I don't
You're
think
the only one, Walt. So please go ahead, mate.
So Dave Grohl is out to eat at a restaurant, and the bill comes in, and it's apparently $333. And somebody took a picture of the receipt and posted it on Instagram. And Grohl decided to leave a $333 tip and round the bill up to $666. Go figure.
Grohl, who's played Satan at least 2 times that I know of in a video for Tenacious D and in their movie.
Right. I've got a picture of him with
Quite
devil
well.
and a fork.
But the music's so good, man. It's
They
just
rock,
music.
dude. They're the greatest band in the world. I mean, come on.
I mean,
I'm
what
talking
would
about
you
Tenacious D. I don't really like Foo Fighters much.
what would your 8 to 10-year-old kids like mine, same age, sort of mine, 11 at the moment? Well, you know, do you inform them about this sort of stuff? How do you break this sort of stuff? Because I want to, I I don't want to say you can't listen to this, you can't listen to that. But I want them to understand how to think for themselves. How do you approach that?
Well, yeah, it's difficult. It's certainly a concern when you've got kids of that age. I've got daughters who are about to turn 8 and 10, and I'm very aware that they're right in the crosshairs of the demonic music industry and who they aim all these acts at. The likes of Rihanna and Beyonce and Taylor Swift and Katy Perry and all these artists are aimed squarely at girls of that kind of age upwards.
Yeah.
And we've got this artist Poppy as well. We're going to maybe get onto her. Maybe we can in due course.
Yeah, go into that.
But yeah, it's a concern. So I try and monitor stuff that they're watching. Like you say, I don't want to say you can't have any pop music in your life. This is a contentious issue for many people, because some say to me that having exposed all these artists as I have and shown all these scenes to be what they really are, used for societal mind control, how can I still continue to listen to the music? And for me, the idea of a life without any kind of music and just shutting off from all popular music is almost unbearable, having been a music man all my life. So I still choose to listen to this stuff. So I don't want to have to say to my kids, you can't listen to any pop music. So then you just have to try and closely monitor what it is they're watching. My girls are very much into Little Mix, this group Little Mix. I've not really discovered anything particularly concerning in their symbolism or imagery, unless I've missed it. They did have a song called, well, maybe I have missed it, but they've had a song called Black Magic, and I caught my eldest daughter watching the video to Black Magic on YouTube, and the song seems innocent enough despite the title of it. But then, YouTube has got this habit of finding videos that are similar in content to the one you've just watched. So It took the words black magic, and it was just about to chain to a video showing a black mass, witchcraft. Right. And I was like, whoa. I don't think we'll be watching that then. So I had to shut that one down very quickly. So you have to be vigilant about these things.
That's it, right. It's almost like breadcrumbs, isn't it? They drop a little Smartie, and then it's half a Smartie and half arsenic, and then it's 3/4 a Smartie and three. It's just it, because I see it with my own kids that it'll get to the end of the video, and then I don't know what it is, 16 videos will pop up, and they'll quite clearly go to the black and red ones or the ones with blood gushing and this, that, and the other, and it all lead them down that path, that rabbit hole. It's an ongoing battle, though, isn't it?
It is, and like we were saying earlier, these music videos are loaded with subliminals. So you're not even necessarily consciously aware of what it is you're absorbing. I've analyzed a bunch of videos where you've got subliminal images spliced in, and you have to be watching the video on a computer, and you have to be very, very quick with the pause key to be able to spot the subliminal, because it's literally a fraction of a second. So it's going straight into the subconscious mind of the viewer, these kids, and registering there and having its effect on their thoughts and their behaviors and their emotions, but they're not consciously aware that they've absorbed it. There's pictures of demonic entities in a Beyonce video and a Robin Thicke video. What's it doing there? Why is there any sensible reason for a bloody demon to be embedded in a Robin Thicke video? And yet it's there, and if you pause the video, you can see it. Really? And it's the same thing with Rihanna videos.
Well, I get it on Rihanna because she blatantly flaunts it, but I just would never have guessed Robin Thicke. I find that funny for some reason. Sorry.
But they've had cases of this in China, haven't they, where they've released games or over there they've got lots of CGI bands and things like that for the kids, and they've actually triggered either psychotic events or epileptic events.
Well, now, I think what you might be referring to is the Pokemon Go episode that had a light frequency or a frequency in one of the animations for, I think it was a duck of some sort, if I'm not mistaken, and it apparently has never been, it's never been shown again. It wasn't like they were trying to do it, allegedly, but who knows?
They had something like 30,000 kids that went ballistic over it.
Yeah, it definitely caused a big ruckus. It's hard to find. You can find it, I think, on YouTube if you want to submit yourself to the chance and the test to find out if you have it or not. Go right ahead.
Yeah. Well, this stuff is real. You know, I used to deny it, but I've done the
I mean,
research.
the whole
and
Pokemon thing itself, the way it took over the world. I watched it when it was starting out as the card game. I was a manager of an arcade at the time, and it just took over the mall I worked in. It was like the craziest thing I'd ever seen. Everyone, all the kids, just went crazy for it. But I didn't care. I didn't do the research on it. It wasn't until the Pokemon Go thing launched that we found out that its creator has openly admitted that he created it as a demon catching game in protest of his evangelical Christian parents. So it's kind of like, well, maybe they did do that crap on purpose in the cartoon.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, where do you stand on 5G? I mean, that's all vibration. It's
Yeah.
no.
It's bad news. Bad news for humans. I'm very concerned about it. It's yet more electromagnetic pollution, radiation, just adding to the soup and the swamp of stuff we're already swimming in with the smart grid, Internet of Things, all these bloody devices broadcasting signals to each other. We're absolutely drowning in that stuff. And I was reading an article today about Vodafone having recently switched on a transmission mast in Manchester on the top of this building. And somebody pointed out on the Facebook thread today, actually, that you're familiar with the movie They Live, right?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yes. One of my favorites.
Great
Yep.
documentary.
And in one of the closing scenes to that movie, you've got Roddy Piper's character who runs up to the top of this building, and there's this massive transmitter that's broadcasting this signal that's sort of distorting everything. And he manages to turn off the transmitter. He gets shot in the process, but that stops broadcasting this signal that's distorting the truth of people's reality, and everyone suddenly is able to see their reality for what it really is. And it's very interesting that this transmitter at the top of the building seems quite similar to the one in They Live. But I was also reading an interview with the chief executive of Vodafone, who was justifying all this and saying, oh, it's going to be marvelous for communications. It's going to make transmission speeds so quick, because that's the way these things are always sold to us, right?
Absolutely.
Convenience.
You'll be able to click that phone and go.
And he was saying, we're going to be rolling 5G out in the Scottish Highlands, the Lake District, and Cornwall. And when I first heard about all these urban areas where 5G is going to be implemented, like the West Midlands and Newcastle and London and Manchester, my first thought was, well, if it comes to it, I'll just have to escape somewhere like the Scottish Highlands and go and live out there instead. And
my first
these
thought
bastards, these bastards have just mentioned the three areas that most spring to mind
people will
if
go
you want to
yeah.
escape urban conurbations and go and live off grid somewhere.
That's
Scottish
because
Highlands.
they're gonna test whether the sheep fall over and die first.
But
Yeah,
you
well,
are
this-
aware of Agenda 2030, yeah, or Agenda 20, whatever it was called.
21 here in the States,
21, where they,
The cities and getting them off the land.
yeah. So isn't it interesting that they would introduce 5G to the urban area, the rural areas? Very
Yeah,
interesting.
it's just sick. You know, the whole thing is anti-creation. That's what all this stuff is. Transhumanism, AI, the smart grid, Internet of Things. It's anti-human. It's anti-creation. It's satanic in nature.
Well,
Mark?
after
Wait,
several
John,
years,
before this question scrolls too far past again in chat, I've missed it twice now. Flat Accord Music has a question for you, Mark. It's about the millennial whoop and other signed song spells in modern music, like Rihanna's or Lady Gaga's whatever, rah rah. I don't know. I don't listen to it, so I don't really know what those are. But
Right.
can you speak to that?
Yeah, so there's this researcher, I forget the guy's name, but he's coined the term the millennial whoop, and he refers to just these meaningless, vacuous, they're not even lyrics, they're just lines that you get in all these pop songs that the kids all sing along to, and it's sort of like, whoa, whoa, yeah, yeah, whoa, whoa, no real words. That's just the hook of the song.
Kind of like Elton John's Lam de Leos or things like that.
Well, there's just this whole trend towards, the vast majority of mainstream pop songs now employing this tactic. And it all speaks to the lowered attention spans of young people now. So society has been cultivated to cause young people to just not be able to concentrate on anything for more than a few seconds. And one of the reasons given for these hooks to be in the songs is because, first of all, you don't really have to think about them. They just become second nature to sing along to these things. But also because that's what you have to do to make a pop song catchy enough to hold a young person's attention for more than a few seconds. So you now got algorithms. They're employing AI algorithms to determine the melody and the what should be in the hook line of a pop song to prevent people from changing the station on the radio. So there's been these social scientists that have done studies into listening habits of young people. And because they have so much available to them at all times via their phones, if they don't find something to captivate them and hold them in one place for more than a few seconds, they're going to be hopping over to some different outlet to get their stimulation. It's the Snapchat, Instagram generation where everything is happening right now. And if it's not interesting enough, then there's something else to replace it in their attention, their shortened attention spans. That's why we're getting all this garbage pop music now. That's why the lyrics are so vacuous and inane, because they have to be. You can't put complex lyrics into pop songs anymore because kids just don't want to hear that. It's just one of the reasons why the music is just so utterly dumbed down now, and none of these artists are interesting anymore.
They just wouldn't understand it, would they? On that note, when I'm sure you're under pressure from your kids to get phones for themselves. I see the kids around here, 10, 11, with iPhones and stuff. When as a parent, when would you be willing to get your kids a phone?
I would like to hold it off until around the age of 12 or 13, but I think that's becoming a major challenge in these times because so many kids now at the age of 7 or 8 have phones and tablets, and they're showing them off to their friends, and they're comparing games and going on to different sites and coercing each other to take part in these things. So
Peer pressure again, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the first generation that's faced this issue of technology absolutely pervading every aspect of your life. And parents now are having to learn how to deal with this because it's not something that anyone's ever had to do before. It's just what some bloody challenges we face in these times, and it's all crept up on us so quickly, to my mind. Everything is absolutely dominated by technology now, and this is only something that's really become major within the last 10 years, I would argue. Prior to that, society was just very different.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the modern phone now is the modern pacifier. It's the modern dummy for your 2-year-old or 1-year-old or 6-month-old.
Yeah, I had to fight my sister. She literally put a TV screen, flat screen, on the wall next to my nephew's crib. I'm like, have you lost your mind? I mean, they're going to start this at an early enough age, and you're going to start it before he can even think for himself? Come on, really? Oh, the fights we had about it. And now he literally doesn't exist without a screen in his face. I mean, he doesn't do anything. In the family events, he's always over in the corner with a screen. If he goes somewhere and didn't bring his own screen, he's bugging you to let him play with your phone or your tablet, or it's just, it's sick. It really is.
Yeah, it's kids everywhere. My kids are, obsessed with tablets and laptops and stuff. I wish I could say otherwise, but I'm just being honest. And I think that's the case with so many kids of that age now. It's almost impossible to keep them away from it.
It is, and I think Adam would agree as well.
Unless you're just going to completely seal them off from all societal influences, it's pretty much impossible. It's inevitable they're going to get involved with this stuff.
I think it's a futile exercise to try and prevent that. I think what's important, not just with regards to devices, media, etc., is in all walks of life to, as you say, don't allow that mobile to be the pacifier. To remember why you bothered to have the kids in the first place. And I think there's a lot of sense that if you bring your kids up, and I've got 11 and 13-year-olds, Mark, and I don't think it's out to do with me. It's more to do with my wife. But I'm blessed that I've got two loving young men who are sensible, and they know it's flat. They don't feel the need to preach it, but I think brought up right, they can engage just like I do with these things and see it for what it is. And I think we're going to come to a bit in a bit when Anthony comes in terms of some of the activism with schools. But I think there's a generation that's coming out that are much wiser already than us old guys. And whilst they may not have been awakened to the flat earth per se, when they do, they've got much more open minds, because actually the world they're brought up in, and I speak for my kids here, they're openly aware, even at their age, for the corruption in society. The corruption I was never aware of.
Well,
And
I think that's the key.
they're prepared
Adam.
for it, and they already ridicule it, you know. So the amount of times my son will go, Illuminati sign, or anything, you know. Woo, Dad! Woo!
Well,
would
he
stick
brought
his
that
triangle up.
wonderful cartoon, man. That cartoon he gave us, and I
Well,
love.
good for you. And I've entrained my eldest daughter to apply critical thought to everything. And I've challenged her on the true nature of the place that we live. I've said, you know, I know that you're told in school that we live on a spinning ball, but there's actually no verifiable proof of this. And, you know, you need to trust your senses. You were given your senses for a reason. So you're told that you're moving in 4 different directions at one time and you're undergoing all these different movements. You know, what do you actually feel? You know, just stand still for a second. Do you perceive any movement whatsoever? And we've been in planes together. We've been on overseas trips, and she sat in the window seat, and I said, look down. Does that look flat to you, or do you see any curvature? And, you know, she tells me what she sees, which is, it seems to be flat. And so I've entrained her to think in that way. I've also got her to look up in the sky and recognize chemtrails and tell the difference between a chemtrail and a contrail. And there's nothing wrong with doing that with kids that young, you know. So now she will actually look up and start a conversation and say, Dad, look, you know, look at the chemtrails today. So she's learned to discern these things for herself. And that's a good process to entrain kids from a young age to do this.
That's the
think
thing,
it's
isn't it,
I-
mate?
I
Teaching them
think
to
it's the-
discern for themselves. That's the thing. Not
That's it. That's the whole point. I think it's not just about flat Earth. It's about everything. It's about teaching them to discern for themselves and think for themselves, and to ask questions, and to not just accept answers. That they can test these beliefs that they have, or that they're being told, and that is the key to everything, whether it's flat Earth or chemtrails or anything else. It's being able to, it's the best gift we can give to our children, is the gift of discernment and thinking for themselves. I think that's a great message.
That's right. All right, so I wanted to mention something about this artist Poppy. So is this a good point to talk
bring
about
it
this?
Yes, please do.
All right, so I put a post up on Facebook today about this artist, in inverted commas. I use the term loosely. She's very much of concern to me because she's being pitched directly at kids of my daughter's age, I would say, alongside all these other pop puppets. And she takes things to new levels because her material is very disturbing, very dark. It has all these connotations towards trauma-based mind control and satanic ritual abuse. And actually, that's nothing unusual, because with so many of these pop music artists' videos, you find symbolism and motifs and images and icons that pertain to mind control programming. It's almost become passé. It's almost like last year's news, this stuff. If you go on the site vigilanttcitizen.com, the guy there has some great articles analyzing so many of these videos and showing you what to look for, all these hints at satanic ritual abuse and mind control. So that's all there in Poppy's stuff. But the additional element with her is that she is portrayed as a kind of artificial intelligent cyborg. That's the act that's being put across. it is all an act, because I've seen interviews with her where she uses a completely different voice and her persona is completely different. So she steps into this role of Poppy. Her real name is Moriah Rose Pereira, and she was apparently born in 1995, so she's 23, but she has this persona of being a prepubescent girl. So when you watch her videos, she's acting like she's 10, 11, 12 years old, and she's obviously designed to appeal to that sort of demographic. So she's got this song out at the moment, which is produced by Diplo, who's one half of Major Lazer, this electronic dance music act, and it's called Time Is Up. And it has to be seen to be believed. In the video, she's this artificial intelligence creation, and this guy, this scientist, is unveiling her to an audience at this public event, and she's being hailed as this great new breakthrough in AI technology. But then she starts to operate to her own agenda, and you see her feeding pills to these people. And after they've swallowed the pills, and they're blue pills, by the way, with all the imagery that brings of the Matrix, and straight after they swallow these pills, you see this binary code appear on their faces, ones and zeros, hinting at, this digital reality. And then they start writhing around on the floor, dying like cockroaches. This all ties in with the lyrics to the song. In the lyrics, she actually says, "You're like cockroaches, and your time is up. My God, you don't even know." And she's starting to talk about artificial intelligence rising to gain a consciousness all of its own. One of the lyrics is, "Every day, exponentially, I'm increasing my memory like you wouldn't believe," something like that. So she's talking about these cyborgs becoming conscious and deciding for themselves that humans are a threat to the plane, entrainment, and they need to be wiped out. And so this AI creation starts killing off all the humans. And this is the message in the video, which is, deeply satanic, deeply anti-creation. And when you factor that in with all the other elements of her persona and all these really dark short videos that she's got on her YouTube channel. So her album has just been released, and it's called Am I a Girl?, which is sort of alluding to the fact that she appears to be this AI creation. She appears to be slightly non-human. And the album was released on the 31st of October, incidentally, Halloween. When else would it be? But prior to the album, she had all these little short videos and vignettes on her YouTube channel, and they are just so unsettling. You see her interacting with these non-human entities like cats, and the cats will speak with a demonic growling sort of voice, like they're possessed. And in one video, she says, "I love the devil." And all the time, you've got this really demonic audio tone in the background that just sounds really doom-laden. And you throw all of this stuff together, and you just get this cocktail of really dark, satanic influences. And this artist Poppy is being aimed at kids. And I think she is going to be pushed as a really big thing, really big news in the weeks and months to come. So all parents need to be very vigilant about this particular individual. So remember the name Poppy.
Yeah, I'd not heard of that one.
I haven't either. I did see one of the people I follow, and I love their videos, and it's just not coming to me who it was now, using a picture of her bathing in blood as the thumbnail for whatever video about the kind of crap she's into. I haven't had a minute to watch it, though.
Yeah, we get all of this. There's images of her bathing in blood. There's images of her wearing a Baphomet dress. Somebody just posted a video on the Skype there, and I think this is one
it's me. It's
Josh.
Christmas party or something.
Is that you, Josh? You got it up? That
No, it's
video?
me.
Is that you,
It's
John?
very, very dark stuff.
It is very weird, very Lady Gaga, and just really where everyone is
when you
funneling
said
towards.
the name of her album is Am I a Girl? My first thought was the whole transgender thing, because my first impression when I saw her was, well, that's a little dude, because I've really gone down that rabbit hole deeply lately. Lady Gaga just exposed herself on stage recently. I have a video showing her little sizzler showing there, and it's really some crazy shit.
Oh, man. The other thing about Poppy is that she is involved with this guy who goes by the name of Titanic Sinclair.
Is that this
And-
other guy I'm seeing? This white-haired dude?
It
in these
could well be him.
pictures?
Yeah, his
Probably.
name.
He's the only other guy I'm seeing around when I looked her up, so it must be him.
Move
name
your
is-
sound settings off screen, John.
Something Mixter. Now, this guy, Titanic Sinclair, was previously part of an act known as Mars Argo with a woman called Brittany Sheets. And I now see that Brittany Sheets has this legal dispute going with Poppy and this guy, Titanic Sinclair, and she's accusing them of ripping off certain aspects of her artistic performance and stealing her act and repackaging it. So they're going to court over this whole thing. And that just reminded me of when Lady Gaga first came out, there was this other girl named Lena Morgana, who used to be a friend of Lady Gaga's before she invented the Gaga persona. Lady Gaga had stolen the whole imagery for her show and her whole thing from Lena Morgana, and she was threatening legal action against her. Well, next thing you hear, Lena Morgana has turned up dead. She falls off the balcony of this building and, falls to her death. And when you look at one of Lady Gaga's videos to the song Paparazzi, she seems to be reenacting this, because you see her falling from a building and then you see this marionette all sort of twisted up on the ground below. So it's like they're mocking what happened to Lena Morgana. And it's just interesting to me that you've now got Poppy, who's got more than a hint of Lady Gaga about her, and she seems to have, according to this other woman's claims, ripped off another act in terms of this persona. So to emerge there.
Man, it's everywhere, isn't it?
It's all really dark stuff anyway. And it's all being packaged as entertainment and pop music aimed at kids,
Mm.
and there's all this stuff beneath the surface. It's not good on any level.
No, right. And it's so, give me next generation's children and I'll give you whatever you want, basically. It's just, very disturbing. But I still think we can turn it around. I still think we can drop those pills in the right direction.
Well, I mean,
Sorry.
it starts at home. I mean, obviously, Mark and Adam have a good hand on getting a handle on it with their kids, but it's so prevalent. It's just really got to be a 24/7 job. They go off to the entrainment camp, and you have to deal with all that when they come home and kind of deprogram them. If not, it's just going to take root and grow. That's what they'll think.
That's right. Being a parent in this age is not easy. It's a definite challenge.
That's for
Well,
sure.
Whilst
Before you jump in there, I really need to interrupt here because we need to have
Oh,
a small intervention. I need to save someone before they commit some sort of self-harm.
You're a
There's a
gen.
question that's been thrown out there in chat probably about an hour ago, and it got ignored the first time, and he
It
tried.
wasn't ignored. It got lost because it was a long question in segments, and I couldn't ever piece it all together. I finally put it all together as a long one-question thing. It's in chat. Go, Josh. I'll shut up.
I'll do my best. It's small. It's really in regards to what in the hell does it take to get to be in control there in the UK? You got all this stuff going on in Liverpool, stuff going on in London. I mean, just the craziness, everything from the Beatles to what's going on with, or what was going on with Cream. The Spirit of Longthorn, just who was sort of raised in that whole genre, was really subject to it. So he's just sort of curious as to, is there a club? Is it a lottery? Do you have any clues as to how it is the people that somehow get up into these high positions manage to get up into these high positions? Because a lot of them just seem like you're sort of average Joe.
Is this the guy asking about Paul Oakenfold and James Barton
Yes,
and all these?
yes. That's the
Yep.
one. I finally pieced all the question together.
Yeah.
And I hope I didn't butcher it too bad.
Well, yeah, I mean, Paul Oakenfold, by way of an example, is an interesting case study because he was one of the key instigators of this whole acid house scene, which became the UK dance music movement. It led to the rave scene, it led to the birth of the super clubs, and eventually it led to the exporting of electronic dance music as a culture to the United States and other places. And Oakenfold has been right there all along. We get this fable, this myth that Oakenfold in 1987 went out to Ibiza with Danny Rampling and a couple of their mates, and they underwent this amazing spiritual experience on ecstasy and came back and wanted to recreate the vibe. I've got my suspicions about how authentic that story is and whether it's a cover for how Oakenfold and Rampling and these other guys really got pushed in that scene. But look at where Oakenfold's career went from there. You know, he became a producer for the likes of the Happy Mondays and U2. He started doing film scores in Hollywood. He played gigs on the Great Wall of China.
Wasn't his music
pyramids in
used as the theme for The Exorcist? Is that the right Tubular Bells? Is that the right guy, or am I mixing him up?
No, that's Mike Oldfield.
That's Mike Oldfield.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, see, I'm mixing it up. Damn it. I'll shut up.
So Paul Oakenfold's had this amazing career, and he's one of the, you know, he's a millionaire. He's one of the best paid guys in electronic dance music. So how do you get to that position? He's never struck me as the brightest spark. I don't think it's his intelligence quota that's got him there. So something else has. And yeah, it's a question I have. I think a lot of it is down to how willing these people show themselves to be in terms of how much they want the fame and the fortune and the riches and what they're prepared to do to achieve it. That is going to have a big part in how successful they become. To a certain extent, we can only speculate because I've not been there to view exactly what happened with this guy's career. I can only view from a distance at how it's taken off.
Yeah, I'm looking at him on some images now. He's not looking like the brightest bulb in the lamp there.
Yeah, well, he's not. And this comes across in his interviews where he can barely string a sentence together. You know, maybe it's too many drugs. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult for me to answer the question, to be honest, because I'm wondering like anyone else. Certainly, there are family connections.
That was my question next. Is it a bloodline thing, possibly?
Yeah, I've tried to discover stuff about Oakenfold. He seems to have come from a fairly ordinary family. He trained as a chef before he got into the music business. He did work for a time at the Royal Army and Navy Club as a chef, so I don't know if that's got anything to do with it. But yeah, where you get family connections with some of these people, with others, it's more difficult to trace. So I can only think that there's going to be other factors at work, and I can only speculate on that, unfortunately, like anyone else.
Interesting character. I'm not really, apparently that's why I mixed him up with this other guy. I'm just not familiar with him. And definitely the just looking at the imagery, I can see the duper's delight, almost like the astronauts have when they're presenting themselves.
Exactly.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mark, you've been more than generous with your time. And I know Adam's probably dying to get a Riley in here at some point.
Yeah, going crazy on his end.
If you want to hang around to overlap and listen to it, then that would be absolutely brilliant. But as we've already had 2 hours of your time,
sure, it's gone quick.
Doubled our quota. Well, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've had a nice, relaxing time.
Well, I have. Yeah, it's been a very different experience to my normal interviews. So I'll step aside now because I know you want to bring this other guy in, and I'll have a listen, but I won't chip in. I'll just sort of quietly.
Absolutely, you're more than welcome to chip in. We actually want your input, please. Yeah. That's why you're here, friend. That's what we want. We want to have as many minds on these on these ideas and theories, and that's what it's all about, is getting different people's perspective, because we're still working this whole thing out. That's what we're trying to do here.
Well, that's right. So thanks for having me on, and I'll step aside now and let you continue with the rest of the show.
Thank you so much, Mark.
It's been an
absolute pleasure. I've been looking forward to this for going on 18 months, and of course, leave it to karma or whatever it is I've done in a past life to make my car break down on today of all days to do it.
There you go.
Hopefully we can schedule another time sometime in the very near future.
I hope so.
Well, Josh, I know how long you had this planned for. Can't you just do the intro anyway?
Can't I do the intro anyway?
You must have had a good. I know how long we've been waiting for. From about the early September, we had no guests other than saying we've got Mark Devlin coming.
I know, that's all we kept saying.
Who's next week?
Who's coming? I don't know, but Mark Devlin's in November. I know that.
See, you build me up like that, and then I've got to come with something really profound. Otherwise, people are going to be disappointed.
Man,
so
you did
no
more
pressure.
than we could have hoped. It was brilliant.
You showing up was enough. Just being here and again
it's-
doubling the quota. It was just an absolute honor. But
You
really,
know what it is? I think of many other researchers in this vein. There's many other researchers whose work I greatly admire, and all I'm doing is paying it forward. So these guys have inspired me, and I'm now taking what I've learned from them and trying to inspire other people in the same way. It's just paying it forward, and that's what everyone needs to do. You know, each one teach one. That's all it is.
I love it. You're doing it. People are loving you in chat, and you have a lot of fans here on the Iron Realm. I'll give you that.
Wow. Okay.
On the shoulders of giants.
I hope it's not going to be a one-off, and I hope you don't disappear as well now, mate. Because genuinely, you reach a different audience to ourselves, and you also have a lot of credibility. And I think credibility is what this gentleman Anthony's kind of searching for and is achieving in terms of flat Earth. I'll bring him in now, but I honestly, please don't sit back. Chip in, especially if you've got any questions, because I've heard this bloody loads of times. It's boring me with it, to be frank. But please stick your 2 pennies for it. Certainly, if you've got any questions or want any clarity, because I'd love you to take this to a wider audience, because this is something that's gathering pace. And are you there?
Way to sell it, Meekin. Get
Mate,
on with it.
I
Yeah.
bought the book and the T-shirt.
Well, I'm going to share this whole show. I'm recording this, so I'm going to share this whole show with my audience when it's
Thank
done.
you.
So you know, people that follow my work are going to hear this whole thing.
Wow, brilliant. Thanks for that.
They've missed a whole backstory on a thumbs up and thumb down drama going on behind the scenes. Apparently, YouTube is really messing
Oh,
with
yeah,
our
it's
first
insane.
stuff going on.
And you mentioned Billy Ray Valentine earlier, Mark. Josh and I and our buddy Zach have him to thank for us. We actually have a show over there on Truth Frequency Radio as well. It's early morning for us, but it would be prime time for you. So maybe we'll get you over there one day too.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah, I've heard about that one. Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Big shout out to Billy Ray.
Now you've
Shout
said
out
that you're
to
going to
the-
put it out to your people. It's probably a good time to say that you're listening to Iron Realm Media and have no sphere. Just thought I'd get that in there.
Thank you, John. Get that.
Oh,
You're
shut
such a
up,
pro.
man.
You're such a pro.
Riley, get on with it.
Riley.
I haven't said nothing.
Come on,
You
son.
see, I'm
Evening,
really
Tony.
coming out of the FE closet with this show. So anyone that had any doubts about my stance on it, by the time I put this recording out, I'll have lost half of my listenership. But there
See,
you go.
we like to offend as well, friends. So I'm glad we
So-
could do that for you.
Let's be concise and to the point and professional and give Mark a great podcast to put out without having to cut it.
Yeah, and I just want to say thanks a lot to the half of my fan base that will leave me after this show. So it's been good to have you, guys. See you later.
We salute you.
We just say farewell.
Well, maybe if
Enjoy
we're
the
doing,
spin.
if we're doing that, maybe there is, if there are certainly in Mark's audience, people that wondering who these daft sods are, maybe we should just do a quick introduction other than just our names and qualifications, because flat Earth is a serious thing that's painted and as a lunacy thing for uneducated people. I think is one of the greatest phrases, and certainly John.
Just point them to my blog, mate. And
Yeah,
be done
John's-
with it. Get Riley on.
John's certainly that. I mean, John. No, John. John. Do you know John? If people have a look on YouTube, John's responsible for the gyroscope experiments, which go a great way to scientific. I know Nathan Oakley will jump down my head, but for
I was
certainly
going to
the
ask, are
audience-
you losing your mind?
certainly
Nathan's
the
in chat.
audience, Riley, shh, quiet, Riley, quiet. There's, do you know what I mean? And I think there's a lot of stuff we're not uneducated people. We're certainly having fun tonight, but I'm not daft. Walt's not daft, and certainly Zach's the stuff that if we ever get round to it this evening, the stuff that Zach would like to present is of the highest academic order. So if they all
We're
listen,
never going to get round to it this evening.
there's absolutely bob oak,
Ever.
isn't there? absolutely Bobo. But seriously, if you are listening via Mark, then please have a look at our channel and please have a look at the academic stuff that we're
Yeah,
using
there's really
to
great work
validate
done
our
here. We
position.
have many experiments. If you go looking through our archives, we have fun, but we actually got here doing serious work. We just, it doesn't always have to be so stuffy.
Thanks for the plug there, Adam. It's savageplane.wordpress.com, and look up the resources page. There's books to keep you going for months, and I defy anyone to debunk them.
Hashtag Einstein was a shitbag.
Yes.
That's right. Go on any search engine, just put in the term Einstein shitbag, and you should get my blog at the top. Anyway,
Yeah, that's not a
Savage!
joke.
no, it's not. But moving on.
Right, Tony, are you there?
Hello. Yes.
Come on, say hello.
Can you
pal.
hear me?
Yeah.
Loud and
We hear
clear.
you, friend. Welcome,
we need the
sir.
screen. We need the screen share going on. So who's the director of?
I've got on screen. I've got your books.
That's Adam
up, pal.
with the secret sauce.
All right. So we're presenting now. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got you ready. I'm going to give you full screen in a minute once you start, but I've kept a little couple of bits of GIFs on the screen.
We need to talk about your choice of pictures too, there, Tony. If that's what you're screen sharing, is stock footage with LMA.
Yeah.
Well, it was the highest resolution I could find, and it makes up for it. It's
it'll
fine.
help.
Give it to me. I'll take the LMA off there. I'll remove their watermark for you.
Thanks. Okay, so if I was to say to you guys, the fact that heliocentricity is taught in schools as fact, and aside from the fact that that's a foul, if I said to you guys, do you think we'd ever get flat Earth into the mainstream schools? What would your answer be?
Mine would be yes.
It would depend on the numbers.
I think my gut reaction would be Bobo.
Yeah, Bob. Me too, Bobo. Walt.
I don't know. I really doubt it. I mean, there's so much fight and blowback here every time it's brought up in any academic circle in my
It's
area, for
It's
sure.
ridiculed.
There are places on the
Hold
planet
up.
that teach flat Earth.
2 opinions
In
missing
schools.
yet, John.
So we've got 2 and 2 here. We need a deciding vote. Mike?
What's Bobo?
Bob
Nothing.
Hope,
No.
famous singer.
So we
In
need the
your-
deciding vote. Mike, you got the deciding vote. Would you think that
Mark.
flat Earth would ever make it into a secondary school?
That's Mark, and he may or
It's
may.
Mark Devlin. I'm not even sure if he's still.
I'm here.
Oh, he is still here. Okay.
I would consider it extremely unlikely / impossible with the current paradigm we've got.
What if I told you guys that there's a right in law that we can exploit, that if we didn't know it was there, we would never exploit, but now we can? And it came from the result of 2 GoFundMes, one that involved me, one that involved another group, blending together to create this outcome that is enshrined in law, and it's going to be piloted soon. And I'm now going to show you how this has come about. So I got a GoFundMe to do a course, and I said I would dedicate it to flat Earth. I would find a way to get an angle in education where I could challenge the application of the national curriculum into the education system, challenge it in law, not in physics, but in law. Because I believe that it's basically indoctrination. I don't believe that there's a fair, balanced, opposing view. You may get the odd word of geocentrism in there, but you certainly don't get concave, hollow, or flat alternatives. But if you do get geocentrism, it's glossed over really quickly, and it's made to sound as though it's fact that we live on a heliocentric world, and obviously we live on a ball. So I wanted to present something in the legal system to challenge it, because I knew there would be something that I could get my teeth into, but I needed access to the databases. And what you're looking at on screen is the last time I did the legal database research. This is how it was done. It was done with physical books on shelves, and you had to go through a laborious, time-consuming, painstakingly, mind-numbingly crappy, horrible scenario. But that was how you found them. Obviously, that was in 1999 when I last did my undergrad, so it was 20 years ago almost. And times have changed. I got my GoFundMe together. They got me onto the course paid for by everybody in Flat Earth. And 6 days after I put the GoFundMe up, I got the money to join the course that I wanted to do. And obviously, this is now the payback. So back in the day, it was done with books, and it was laborious, time-consuming, boring, and usually the page that you wanted was ripped out by somebody previous, and it was useless to you. But that was how it was done. Now, it's obviously done in electronic form, and it's convenient. I can do it at home in my undies. I don't have to physically go anywhere. And these are obviously expensive, but the way that we research law in England is you look up something called Halsbury's laws, and it's a bit awkward to work on because you have to think of many angles to kill the Goliath. It's not as obvious as what it seems. My view was that my initial angle was that teachers must have a statutory duty to tell the truth and teach us facts, but it turns out that didn't exist. But I can't write a dissertation on no law. I've got to find an angle. Otherwise, there's no dissertation. And obviously, I'm here to find an angle. So I'm looking through the Halsbury's laws. And obviously, you can see at the top, you've got agency. You've got the law to do with aviation. You've got broadcasting laws. And obviously, I need education. So when I scroll down to education, I get all these further subcategories. So these are notes at the top, but then you get numbered paragraphs that relate to different tangents that you can go off in, and you can look at. It's really weird to work out where you're going to attack. Are you going to attack head teachers? Are you going to attack teachers, boards of governors? Are you going to attack the Secretary of State for Education? But nonetheless, you've got to work on an angle, and you've got to find something. Otherwise, I've got no dissertation. So I found that in education, I found that there was this paragraph number 6. And then once you open this out, you've got another subparagraph called the curriculum. And then sub to that, you've got the curriculum in England. And then sub to that, you've got this national curriculum for England. And its general rule, this is where the duty to secure the implementation of the national curriculum for England resides in law. If I click on this, it'll give me the actual legislation. I don't do it for the purposes of this, but this is how I found that the national curriculum is law. It must be taught. Moving forward, within this category number 6, there's another subcategory. Instead of being the curriculum in England, you've also got the curriculum in Wales, not relevant for me. You've got sex education, not relevant for me. But then you've got this little thing at the bottom, politics. And I was like, what does that mean? I know what politics means in its more general sense, but in the context of education, why is it even there? There must be something there. I'll have a look through it just to see what I can see. When I open up the politics tab, it gives me political indoctrination and then the duty to secure a balanced treatment of political issues. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk through 908 and then followed by 909. And I'm going to contrast the two positions because they are they're opposing, the opposites. So 908 is to do with the political indoctrination. And what this says is the local education authority, governing body being Board of Governors, and head teacher, but notice that there's no teacher mentioned, must stop the pursuit of partisan political activities by any of the pupils at a maintained school. And they must also stop the promotion of partisan political views in the teaching of any subject, be it religion or science or anything else, history perhaps, but it's any subject. It pervades all of them. So the question becomes, well, what's partisan political? Now, we all have a basic impression of what that might mean, and I'm not going to try and explain this. In explanation, I'm going to show it with a case. But partisan political, basically, you're going to have to think about this from two perspectives. One being, is flat Earth what they're talking about here? Is flat Earth partisan political? And also, is heliocentricity partisan political? Because if either of them or both of them are partisan political in the eyes of the law, then the head teacher must stop the promotion of them in school by the teachers because it's illegal. Mm-hmm. Now, I think I can get in, or I'm going to get in, an argument to say that the heliocentric argument for the ball of space and all that, so orbiting the sun and all that, I'm going to argue that is partisan political within the meaning of the definition of partisan political from the case that I'm about to go through. But also flat Earth can be considered it too, because they can equally argue it back. So you've got to make a decision of, well, what does partisan political actually mean? And does it only apply against flat Earth, or is it actually against them both? Because if it is against them both, neither of them should be taught unless there's a caveat that says that they should both be taught, but there should be criteria to it.
Yeah, but Anthony, surely
Yeah.
you can't find anything that's ridiculed as much as flat Earth, can you? That would set a precedent for this. Do you know?
Yes.
Well, I'd just say, what have you got as a definition of partisan political?
I haven't
John,
got a definition.
John,
on a
I've got
legal.
case.
Well, this is the
Okay,
point.
well,
This
so
is a
case
good
study.
question, a blind question again, Anthony, actually.
Yeah.
John's
There's
probably
a
not
pa-
aware,
the
and neither's
definition of
probably...
partisan. The partisan
neither's-
political is defined by a case, which I will come to in a minute, and then we can apply whether it applies equally against both flat Earth and heliocentricity, or is it just against heliocentricity? And if there is a distinction, what's the distinction, and where do we draw the line?
Well, in
and
that
I'll
case,
come
I
to it.
think we'll let you continue
Yeah.
to the end.
I'll come to it because we're getting there. So just bear that in mind at the minute. If it's partisan political, the head teacher must forbid it, right? But we'll come back to that. So this is the general prohibition. The first rule is the prohibition of the indoctrination of, right? If it's partisan political, so long as the teaching of it isn't promoted by teaching, then it's going to be okay, but it's got to be promotion of partisan political in regards to the teaching of any subject, be it RE or otherwise. So that's the general position. However, the next one is there is a duty to secure a balanced treatment of political issues. Okay, so you've got the same three people: the local education authority, the governing body, the board of governors, and the head teacher. But again, notice that there's no teacher in this. Must take steps that are reasonably practicable to secure that where political issues are brought to the attention of the pupils whilst in attendance at a maintained school, a state school, that the pupils are offered a balanced presentation of opposing views. So I'll read that again. Must take such steps that are reasonably practicable to secure that where political issues, flat Earth, are brought to the attention of pupils whilst in attendance at a maintained school, the pupils are offered a balanced presentation of opposing views. So
would you say
Anthony,
flat
can-
Earth is political?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, John. And more importantly,
We're going to come back to that.
Mark, Mark, at this point, would your input on flat Earth as a qualifying criteria for political issue?
Yeah, I'm not sure it would qualify as political. It's more scientific to my thinking.
Okay, so
I don't think it.
52 million pounds a day of American taxpayers' funds are siphoned off into a imaginary medium of space. Does that now bring it into the realm of political?
Well, depends on your perspective, I guess. An argument could be made for it being so, but it's not an obviously political issue, I would say, when it comes to school curriculums.
Yeah, I'd agree with obviously.
Well,
That's
how
the
about geopolitical? Wouldn't it be considered geopolitical? How is that not a geopolitical issue as to the exact shape of where these politics are taking place?
Yeah, put geo in front
It
of something.
alters size of land mass and area of, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. It seems like it would have an effect for sure.
Well, I'll tell you what, Riley, finish away,
So
and then we can discuss.
We've got a footnote at
Sorry.
number 9, and that's what I now click on so that we can disseminate what we're talking about. And when it says about being offered, I'm working on the concept that it is political, and it's whether or not it's partisan political or not. And we'll go. I'll come into it. It's the next clip, but just bear with me for the minute, because if it is considered political, then this applies. If it's not considered political, then I've not got a paper. So it has to be considered political for the purpose of the paper. But point 9, it says, there's the actual legislation, which I would never, ever have found unless I had this GoFundMe, which got me on the course that gave me access to this. Okay. It says a balanced approach does not involve equality. Balanced means nothing more than fair and dispassionate. And there's a case. It's R against the Secretary of State for Education and Skills of 2007. Forget about the bottom line, doesn't matter. So this is the case. And in this case, the catchwords and digest give you a really brief outline of what this is about. Political views. Secretary of State distributing to secondary schools films concerning global warming. There was a guidance note on the website that accompanied the film, and it gives reference to the meaning of the word partisan, the meaning and the ambit of the duty of the local education authority to stop the promotion of partisan political views, and the meaning of the duty to offer a balanced presentation of opposing views when political issues are brought to the attention of the pupils. So this is going to draw the line in the sand for everybody. So whether it's partisan or not, whether it's political or not, all the scenario that we're talking about is all in this case. Now, it's to do with Al Gore's video of 2007 or 2006, An Inconvenient Truth About Global Warming, how the end of the world is nigh unless we do major things. Now, at the time, I remember it being really controversial. I was too young and too not really interested about why, but now I realise its importance. And obviously, it's to do with whether or not it was like brainwashing kids about scaremongering and whether or not it was true, because most people still challenge whether or not global warming is actually a thing. Some people say it is, some people say it's not, but it's still controversial even today. But the issue was, is it actually political or not? And this is where it says about political. It says, this video was considered that it was political in that it argued that global warming was caused by man and that urgent and, if necessary, expensive and inconvenient steps had to be taken to counter it. Well, we can paraphrase that with an equivalence. So we could argue that the need for the national curriculum to teach just one area of the heliocentric argument is a man-made decision, and it's not reflecting the views of the other views, be it concave or whatever. And on that basis, paraphrasing this into something similar can be done. And therefore, I would say that would make the heliocentric application in the national curriculum political, because it's the absence of everything else that's not in there that really should be in there. And that, I would say, that would satisfy the definition of political. Guys, do you want to have a view?
I'd say I think you're onto something. I think I'm just looking up the word political, and it's saying in its second definition, relating to the ideas or strategies of a particular party or group in politics. As political, it says relating to the government or public affairs of a country. So in the first definition, yeah, maybe it's not political, but in terms of, if you're thinking of heliocentrism as a religion that is unprovable theory, then it's absolutely relating to the ideas or strategies of a particular party or group.
Correct. I agree.
I'd state that, and it relates a little bit to what Josh is talking about, but in this precedent, we've got the Al Gore global warming nonsense, haven't we, and stuff, and within that narrative that we were all fed from when we were kids, there's the ozone layer over Antarctica. Now, if Antarctica doesn't exist in the formation it is proposed to be, then surely within all of that, the shape of Antarctica, if that's a falsehood, within just the Al Gore case study you've got there, which is already accepted, that's sufficient acceptance, because it's relevant to the case already, the shape of it, as in you can't have a hole over something that's not at the bottom of a ball.
I think there's numerous ways you could argue to get it in. I think it's more difficult to argue that it's not political.
I think that's where you've got some work to do with your peers, Anthony, you know, in terms of at the uni, is to see which bits are the strongest, which flat earth arguments are the strongest to use with regards legally to what's stated in this case. Because,
well, in terms of partisan as well, if you look that up on the sort of mainstream thing, it says number one, a strong supporter of a party, cause, or person. So partisan politics, I mean, it doesn't really make much sense. But then if you look at the second definition, it says a member of an armed group formed to fight secretly against an occupying force, in particular one operating in Germany-occupied Yugoslavia, Italy, and parts of Eastern Europe in the Second World War. So, I mean, partisan politics,
John.
it's the definition that needs defining first.
It's okay,
Johnny,
we've got that. We've
yeah.
got the partisan bit. It's coming up.
Yeah, I was going to say, these little bits here that you're resonating with, just hold on to your underpants, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because if
So
you
let-
want
let-
shit
let me move
that's going to
forward.
resonate, just wait in terms of this document. It's awesome. Go on, sorry.
Yeah,
Taylor.
Okay, reveal.
So basically, the claimant submitted that if the film, which was sent to schools in order to facilitate its showing, was itself one that promoted partisan political views, and the schools then made it available to its teachers and pupils, inevitably there was the promotion of partisan political views, irrespective of the publication of the guidance, since the breach of the statute would be irremediable. So that's the argument, that by showing it in itself, that would be the offence. So it says the issues of law that arose related to the construction of 406 and 407, which was the prohibition initially, the general prohibition, and then the right to allow the balanced argument of the opposing views. In particular, the meaning of the word partisan and the meaning of the ambit of the duty of the local authority to stop the promotion of such views, and also the meaning of the duty to offer a balanced presentation of opposing views. So these are the three key points that we're actually discussing right now, and this is what the judge decides. So held just means the decision. The judge decided. So he decides 3 points: number 1, number 2, and number 3. Number 1, the word partisan had to be construed as meaning one-sided. Regardless of what the dictionary says, it just means one-sided. So in terms of heliocentrism, I would argue that that's absolutely a one-sided point, because they don't teach anything about geocentrism, or no one knows about hollow earth theory or flat earth theory. It's absolutely one-sided.
I think forgetting flat Earth, it would be at least appreciable, given scientific evidence, to demonstrate geocentrism on a ball, at least. Because
now they may mention geocentrism, but it goes on, and this is where these little Roman numerals gets really interesting, because these all apply directly against the way heliocentrism is taught. So look at what it says. One-sided, and in a court determining whether expression or promotion of a particular view could evidence or indicate partisan promotion of these views, should consider the following factors, namely whether there was, and there's 4 of them. The first one, a superficial treatment of the subject matter, typified by portraying factual or philosophical premises, gravity, as being self-evident or trite with insufficient explanation or justification, and without any indication that they might be subject of legitimate controversy, which is basically everything to do with gravity, curvature, all the things that we fight about. And they don't tell you that it's controversial. They don't even tell you that there's an opposing view, but it's just taught as truth that we live in a sphere, and they make it sound matter of fact, and we all can relate to that, because we've all been through the education system. If you were educated after 1988, maybe some of the gents on this panel perhaps not, but that is the way it's taught. Everything that I've just read there.
Don't miss this next bit out again. You did this on Nathan's show. This is the best bit for me.
The next bit says, the misleading use of scientific data, misrepresentations, and half-truths, and one-sidedness. Again, that's all about heliocentricity in science. It fits into it completely. So it's like, oh my God, that's been written for us. And it wasn't. It was written for Al Gore's thing. But this is what the judges said. And heliocentricity is all about the misleading use of scientific data, misrepresentations, and half-truths. For example, how do you have a gas pressure without some kind of container? It's part of the definition. And we seem to have one, but they're only telling us half the story, and it applies in all over the heliocentrism argument. But one-sidedness, half-truths, misrepresentations, misleading use of scientific data. Have you looked at the scientific data for the Cavendish experiment?
No, it's pretty interesting. But Tony, where's this? Where was this judgment made? What court?
It was made in it's been reported in
European
different journals, but it went to the Court of Appeal, which is the highest court. It went on judicial review. So it went to the Court of Administration on judicial review, and it's binding on all lower courts. So it's high enough for it to be binding. So we're all right with this. This is legally binding, and it's case stated as well. So
Is
it does
this
bind.
EU? Is this EU courts or
No, this is England.
right?
The administrative courts is where they deal with judicial review, and it's English. It's not European. It's English.
I think, as everything with law, it all comes down to the meaning of the words and like you're trying to nail down the section that is most relevant to it.
Yeah.
I think you're definitely hitting on something here. It may be, if there are barristers out there or anyone on this sort of scale that could. What I'm worried about is it will go in front of a judge or whatever and just be ruled out as not part of this law.
It's academic, though, isn't it? It's academic, and
It
it's
is.
arguing both
I
sides.
know exactly where you're coming from. Yeah, I know. And I think it's fantastic to interpret the judgments of this court in terms of the heliocentric lie. It's just well worth
John, from my
exploring.
well, we've only done part one of part one, but when Tony was talking to me about this stuff before he got access to this database and the likes, there's certain things that you hope, certain little nuggets that he was intimating at finding, and chatting with him, you think, well, you might see this, you might find X, Y, and Z. But actually, as we read through this, there's so many parts that are, and Mark, you'll probably get this, because you were talking about Martin Kenny and Brother Sanchez and synchronicity in Santos. And to me, this is huge synchronicity, what's occurring.
Yeah.
Not only with
Mark's
what you're about to reveal with regards to on the ground, UK-wise, but in terms of the validation and the work that the community, through Nathan's channel, has put in to be able to give confident answers to so many of the things that the ballers would throw at us as their evidence, and we can destroy it. And it's going to be very interesting as this develops as to what happens, because, like I say, synchronicity is a bitch. And go on, Tony, keep reading, mate, because...
Yeah, so in this context, we're trying to talk about whether something's partisan political or not, and the four factors are what I've just read for the first one. And if it's considered to be partisan political, the head teacher's got to make sure that it's not promoted. Otherwise, it got to be stopped, right? So I'm pretty certain that at this point, the first point that we brought up there is partisan political when you apply it against heliocentricity, because it's everything that's been written there. But this is another factor. There's four. This is a second factor. And these are the factors that are considered, right? So if you get 3 of the 4, you're still going to be in. Even if you get 2, you're probably still going to be in. But we've definitely got 1. The second one states that the deployment of material in such a way as to prevent pupils from meaningfully testing the veracity of the material and forming an independent understanding as to how reliable it was. Well, the minute you mention the word reliable, instantly you're thinking of the likes of NASA, and anything to do with space, you can't test the veracity of any of the material it is sent to, because it's completely one-sided and you can't test it. But also, independent understanding as to how reliable NASA is not taught, and there is no ability for that in schools for NASA.
Mate, I've got a direct
bingo paragraph there, right there. Yeah. That's absolute gold.
We've got the I did A-level physics, and the Cavendish experiment is taught in A-level physics, and it is deployment of material, equipment which will not yield the results because the results aren't yieldable, and certainly not with the equipment, the quality of equipment and the scale in which it's done, right? This is exact contradiction here. The deployment of material in such a way as to prevent pupils meaningfully testing the veracity of the material, forming an independent understanding how reliable it was. That whole element of when they bring in experimentation through gravity to you at A level is exactly that. It's a deployment of material. You can't, and you're railroaded with it. Yeah, if you do question it, you're moved on. Just has to do the calculation.
It applies to Foucault's pendulum. It applies to the distance to the sun. I mean, how often are you going to ping a radar transmission to and from Venus, right? You can't. And this is exactly what we're talking about. These are the things that we are taught are true, and you can't test it. You can't test most of the stuff that you get taught. And again, you're not taught to critically analyze. So this second part, forming an independent understanding as to how reliable it was. Has anybody ever formed an independent understanding as to how reliable anything was that you were taught at school? And the answer is no, because you're not taught to critically analyze anything. So that in itself is an issue. But that's only the second factor. Let's move to the third. And this is glorious. Think about Neil deGrasse Tyson and Brian Cox and co. The exaltation of protagonists and their motives, coupled with the demonization of the opponents, that would be us, and our motives. Isn't that just exactly what Neil deGrasse does and co?
Black-tard.
Yep. And every interview where they're even asked about it, we can show that that's the case.
Yeah. It's ridicule, but it's also the exaltation of. So Neil deGrasse Tyson's held in this position of, he's an astrophysicist. That's exaltation, right? Actually, this is equally as valid as the first two paragraphs, but it equally applies. We're on 3. We're definitely on. We'll get to the fourth one, the final one of the 4 factors that relate to the first point that the judge made. The fourth one states the derivation of a moral expedient from assumed consequences requiring the viewer to adopt a particular view and course of action in order to do right as opposed to do wrong. Well, if you're going to if there's a derivation of your moral expedient from the assumed consequences requiring, in this case, a viewer, but in heliocentric, a learner, to adopt a particular view and course of action in order to do right as opposed to do wrong, that's steering you towards accepting heliocentricity without any challenge to it, because this is obviously the way it is, guys. We all know this, Aristophanes. And that's exactly what happens. You're not allowed to critically analyze whether or not the sun might be 93 million miles away. Sure, you might scratch the surface and say, how do you know that, sir? But I can guarantee you the answer that you get given next will be accepted, because you're not going to critically analyze it. You're going to think, oh, well, sir's got it right, so I must accept it. And so, again, I would argue that this is completely satisfying the definition of partisan in the context of partisan politics. And this is basically the part of the restriction. The first part is the promotion of partisan, but the second part is that it's partisan political. And we're definitely in with partisan at this point. So the issue then is whether or not it's promoted, right? And subjectively, you can think to yourself, is heliocentricity promoted in schools, right? Whether it's partisan or not, is it promoted? Of course it is. There's a globe in every classroom. There's a globe on every wall. Everybody knows that globe's there. Everyone's heard about it, right? It's definitely promoted. It's not been given equal, like a fair amount, say, well, there is opposing views. There could be alternative explanations. It is contentious. Not everybody agrees. It's taught as fact. So let's see what he says. Yeah.
You've got part 4 there, and bear with me because I'm going to read it because I've got a half-assed idea in my head. But the derivation of a moral expedient from assumed consequences requiring the viewer to adopt a particular view, course of action in order to do right as opposed to wrong. Now, in relation to this actual case law, this is with regards to forcing an individual to adopt the viewpoint based on, if you don't adopt it, you're dooming the planet to death via whatever course of man's effects it is. Now, to me, that fourth point is the bit that I'm struggling to kind of squeeze in exactly how that fits, and that might be chat and other feedback we need to get, how the demonization of us flat earthers is
let's just argue for the sake of completeness, or let's, for shits and giggles, let's say that this is the weakest of the 4, and we'll say that we were unable to satisfy this factor, right? Look, what it says is there are factors that are to be considered, The views, it says here, what does it say? It says, determining whether the expression or promotion of a particular view could evidence or indicate partisan promotion of these views should consider the following factors. So even that doesn't mean satisfy. It just means consider. So you might be able to get away with just 2 of them, but you're definitely going to get away with 3 of them, and obviously 4 you are in. But even if you drop one of them off because it might not be the strongest of arguments, there's always going to be the weaker of 4 arguments. There's always going to be the strongest.
You would assume the needs based on the, like you were saying, they might need 1, not need 2, not need 3. You'd assume the needs probably based on the supporting evidence that then comes with that claim. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So if you can then back up 3, 4, I don't think is. I'm not saying it's not relevant. I'm saying it requires a little bit of acute thinking to tune it. Do you know what I mean? But
well, put it this way: if I said to you, if you want a career in physics as a teacher, you're going to have to accept that it's the heliocentric way, because you're not going to get anywhere unless it is that, because everybody accepts that we live in a 93 million mile sun. That's realistically going to make you go with heliocentricity because you think that your career is going to land on that point.
Pick that box. Move on.
So that was the first point. So we've got 3 points. That was the first point done. The 4 factors of that first point are done. The second point that the judge said, the mere distribution by the Secretary of State to schools, which is basically the same as saying teaching heliocentricity in this case, to facilitate their showing of the film and accompanied by guidance was not per se, on the face of it, or irremediably a promotion of the partisan political views. The statute could not possibly mean that Section 406 was breached whenever a partisan political film was shown to pupils in school time. So showing the film or teaching heliocentricity in itself wouldn't be partisan. However, what was forbidden by the statute...
Wait, just a sec there. Because this is where I think there is a slight difference in the situations. Now, this is a one-off screening of a statement about how bad humanity is. Whereas what you've got in contrast on the other side is continued and supported stuff, not just in one field, but in multiple fields where there isn't. You're going to focus on the science-based stuff, but this is the history-based bullshit where the alternatives aren't there. So
yeah,
I think here where they weren't so worried about that, actually it's another strength for your case.
Well, the next line you've just interrupted with the next line that qualifies what you've just said. What was forbidden by the statute was political indoctrination, which is what you've just said. That's the bit that's forbidden. Indoctrination. It's not the showing of the clip. It's not the teaching of heliocentricity. What is forbidden is the indoctrination of, which is where the continuous, basically, reassertion of the solar system and the heliocentric model is the indoctrination.
But that's what the whole system is. I mean, that is what the system is that we were
Anyone disagree?
in and what we went to. That's what our kids are involved in.
Yeah. Does anybody disagree? I guess Josh just fell asleep.
No, I'm here. Sorry, I'm muted. I was trying to think of how we would have to then define indoctrination. Because Walt's right. The whole system is by design indoctrination.
Exactly.
If you want to take on indoctrination, well, then now you're not talking about inserting flat Earth into the school system. You're talking about a complete destruction of the school system.
Complete destruction of the heliocentric being taught or indoctrinated.
Well,
the balance is clearly in favor of heliocentricity, is it not?
So bells for periods and recess and lunch and everything.
We need
all indoctrination.
No, only in regards to heliocentrism, because it needs to be balanced, and that's the bit that's not. There's a one-sided indoctrination with the absence of the fair and equal opposing views being presented. But that's forbidden.
For that, as far as that goes, we could look at science and like not ever hearing anything about Tesla until we all did our own research way out of school, or any of the lies we've been told about science. I mean, we could take this to the nth degree with
maybe. Well,
breaking this system like this. I mean, I'm all about this, man. I want to break it down. Trust me, you don't know. Take the power back. But I do want to throw all the, ideas at you.
We're only doing it from
you as
one
well.
angle. we're only doing it from the view that heliocentricity is being indoctrinated into kids.
Gotcha. Nope, I see. I see where you're going.
Indoctrination.
Right. We have
So-
to focus on one thing at a time. Right. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
general
Take it
sense.
piece by piece. It's
Exactly.
bite size. Anyway, so
Since this is the biggest lie that covers all the rest, I think we're
Yeah.
starting in the right spot, my friend, for sure.
now this is the bit that's important because it says, therefore, a teacher who in the course of a school day, as part of the syllabus, which it is, presents to his pupils with the appropriate setting and with proper tuition, but look at this bit, and debate a film or document or topic, maybe heliocentricity, which itself promoted in a partisan way some political view, could not possibly be the mischief against which the statute was intended. So what they're saying is teachers are generally going to fall outside. And I think that's right, because the average teacher, yeah, he might have a degree, but let's be honest, he's reciting that which he was taught to kids. He's never really thought about it because he's done his degree, and no disrespect to anybody with a degree, but at the end of the day, the bottom line is if you've got the degree, you're gonna parrot back that which you were taught by the teacher that you remember the most fondly in your chosen matter of, teaching, right? So, but what this is saying is that a teacher who does all this in the normal context of his normal job,
That's right.
but it does say and debate. But anyway, proper tuition without debate maybe falls outside of it, because there isn't really any debate in the classroom about whether or not we do live in a heliocentric
Right.
world or not.
That's the
Go on, John.
No, John, you may have muted yourself. Uh-oh. Are we losing you, John? Sounds like we may have lost John. They took him out. They heard the truth
John, you
coming
can-
through. There
Or
he
they
is.
They may have switched his mute button mid-sentence. They like to swap it around. So sometimes when the light's on, that means it's muted.
Oh, I know all about it, my friend.
And they swap it around.
I've brewed many a pot of coffee on the air like that. It seems we've lost John. Darn.
He'll come back.
He'll be back.
He's not going to miss this because he
Can't-
likes
you
this
can't
kind
hear.
of stuff.
No, you're in and out.
Yeah,
It's like
you're in and out, man. It's like you've got the hack going. It's
You
worse than
can't.
the hacksaw.
I mean,
Nope, just an occasional word, John. That's all we're catching.
Go and put 10p back in the meter.
okay.
They might have limited your bandwidth until you pay your bill.
British humor.
Should we carry on or should we wait?
I don't know. He might be resetting. It might be the best bet on his end for his.
He'll
Skype.
come back to it. He'll come back to it.
Yeah, he'll come back.
Try
Come
now,
back.
yeah. Can you hear me?
And I had something I was going to
Right.
wait till he came back after he finished. I had a point, and I've lost it worrying about if we had lost John. Damn it.
I don't know. Can you hear me?
There
Yeah.
he is.
There we
Well,
And
maybe not. And he's gone. And he's gone.
the wrong button.
Oh my goodness. Well,
I love it.
just one button away, one click away from perfection.
I think
As
we need to
always.
stop speaking when he speaks.
It's all going tits up, isn't it?
He's back.
You're back now.
I'm back. Yeah, but I've got nothing to say.
I
think that
just
was
I
brilliant.
just nipped away to get a little snack. I thought, oh, I hope I don't miss out. I'm assuming I haven't.
No, you missed nothing.
I was hoping you were going to put a link to where that document
So-
is.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Which document?
The one I'm looking at with
It's not something that I can link because the link expires because it's a database that you've got to be registered through the university to get. This is what
Oh,
we pay the
gotcha.
fees for. This is not.
Right,
That's why I've got it
gotcha.
on screen so you can read it. It's from Halsbury's laws, and you can't get to it without paying. That's why I've
That's
put it on
what I
screen so
wanted to
you can
know.
see it.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyone watching this, take a screenshot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You may not get this
It
shit
may not be
anymore.
there. Right.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
it
I
will
think
be
this
there,
is
but
brilliant stuff.
it lapses. But anyway, check this out though. So generally speaking, what this is saying is that a teacher in his normal job isn't going to fall foul of this, right? But it does require proper tuition and debate, right? Whether proper tuition is that's moot because if you're not being taught the truth, that's an issue. But the debate bit is required, and there is no debate, right? It's taught as fact, and that's where I think it's wrong. So this bit's a bit of an issue, and it is something that I'll be like arguing. Generally speaking, a teacher isn't going to fall foul of it, but the headmaster would because he's named specifically as a duty. He has the duty, right? Anyway, so that was the second point. So it's to do with whether or not it's actually being promoted because of the indoctrination risks And that's the second point. So the third and final point that the judge said in this case, in order to comply with the requirements of 406 and 407 of the 96 Act, the Secretary of State, when actively distributing the film, or in this case teaching heliocentricity, has to make clear that some or all of the matters contained therein were not supported or promoted by him, and there was a view to the contrary. Now, even if he thinks that heliocentricity is right, and he probably does, really, he should be telling people that they're not necessarily supported or promoted by him. But if he thinks it's right, he's not going to say that, is he? But we've got the opposing view. So the fact that he's not saying that there's a view to the contrary, in other words, hollow earth, concave, convex, there's no mention that there are alternatives.
It doesn't matter whether he agrees with it or not. The second point is that there was a view to the contrary. So his opinion's irrelevant. If he's aware that there is an opinion to the contrary, it's his obligation to represent it.
So, Tony, are you aware? Sorry to interrupt, but are you aware of the case against I think it was the Secretary of State for Education in 1905, where they were down in Southampton and they sued him successfully and got him to resign over teaching heliocentrism in schools?
You're on about Ebenezer. I can't remember his name. I am aware of it.
Yeah, I can't remember his name either. I haven't been able to back it up with evidence either. I did try and look it, but I saw it originally in a sort of old microfiche.
Yeah, it was in the Herald, wasn't it? The Daily
That's
Herald.
right. Yeah,
I am familiar with it, and that's one of the things that I need to cross-reference to see whether or not there are any cases, because this will be in there. If that Ebenezer case ever made it to trial, it'll be in there. Whether or not it's in there or not.
Funny one. It was a funny one because they were trying to get him on. I can't remember what the hell it was now, but it was
heresy.
Sorry.
They were trying to get him on heresy because he was trying to say that it was heresy to teach that the Earth was a sphere.
No, it was something else. It was like the Imposters Act. They were trying. It was I think it was the Imposters Act. I'll look it up for you and drop it over to you.
Well, I do have it, but drop it over anyway in case it's additional to what I've already got. But anyway, let's carry on because it says. In order to comply, the Secretary of State, when actively distributing the film, I've done that bit. Right, so what it says is, nevertheless, there is no need to comment on every single aspect of heliocentricity in the guidance, or in this case, the film. In this particular case, the guidance, as at the date of the application for judicial review was launched, had been inadequate. In light of changes made to the guidance note, which the defendant had agreed to make and had already made, no order would be made as to relief. So basically, this says that there were mistakes made, right? And there were rectifying corrections that were considered to be acceptable. So in other words, there was no order to be made because he accepted that there was a mistake originally and then he changed it. But in the context of heliocentricity, that's not going to apply. They haven't changed any of it. There's no discussion. There's no contentious views. There's no views to the contrary. There's no balanced views either way. But this is all in the context of whether or not it's partisan political, right? And if it's indoctrination or not. And if it is partisan political and it is indoctrination, which I'm going to argue that it is, then it needs to be removed or qualified by saying there are opposing views here and it's by far settled science and these are the opposing views. Then there should be the discussion, and then the kids should then be made to get, or then should be because they've then been presented with the opposing views. They've then got the ability to either take more research into it themselves, or make a decision there and then if they choose to, or delay it for later on in life. Because let's be honest, I'm 38 now, and I only challenged the shape of the Earth when I was 36. But if I'd have been told when I was 10 that, hey, this is by far settled science, you might want to go and look into this yourself and form your own opinion, that might have gone back and done it. Maybe I wouldn't, but I would have at least liked to have had the chance. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
So that's to do with whether or not it's partisan political and whether or not it's indoctrination. And if it is, it should be stopped. Now, this is the second part of it. This is to do with the activism. So this is where the result of my GoFundMe overlaps with the result of another group's GoFundMe, which was to do with the tour. Adam was part of it in Nottingham, to do with Roxanne, the globalist denier, and her troops.
Yeah,
I don't know
shout out to Harry, shout out to Jason. Top work.
I don't know who the ringleader is. I only got to them very late in the table, which I found amazing that I didn't know about these people until about 3 weeks ago. And when I went into their chat, I hardly recognised any names. Yet we're all in the same circle. It's like almost as if Google.
This thing is growing, man.
Yeah, it's almost as if they're keeping it divided somehow. It's weird. Anyway, so the second part of it, the 909 bit, which was the second paragraph, states. The local authority, governing body, and the head teacher must take reasonable steps to secure that. And this is the bit where political issues, flat earth, are brought to the attention of pupils that are in attendance at the school. The pupils are offered a balanced presentation of opposing views. So even if I can't get in, I can't argue that it's partisan political from the point of law, which is going to form most of my argument, I am going to be able to argue that all we've got to do as flat earthers is bring these political issues to the attention of the pupils whilst they're in attendance at a school, and then the headmaster, because it says so here, the headmaster must take reasonable steps to secure that the pupils are offered a balanced presentation of opposing views. That is our way into the schools, because all we've got to do is bring it to their attention and then prove to the head that we've done it, because there'll be flyers going around the school and all the kids will be talking about it, because that's what will happen in a school. Once we bring it to their attention, the headmaster must take reasonable steps to ensure that the kids are offered a balanced presentation of opposing views. We're in. Now, brilliant. I didn't know about this until I did until I got the GoFundMe results, and I did what I'm doing now. And Roxanne and Harry and Robin and all the people on her side, they got the benefit of a GoFundMe as well. And there's an overlap, and that overlap gives us the way into the schools. So all these people that challenged, criticised, and rebuked the idea that GoFundMe was just a cash cow or some kind of, sure, I'm not saying that doesn't happen. What's his name? Greater Sapien. Talking to you there, lad. What I'm saying is that in my case, I had a GoFundMe, Harry had a GoFundMe, there's an overlap, and all of a sudden there's a way in there that we didn't have before this happened. So yeah, sure, there is the odd one that makes a mockery of the GoFundMe situation. Greater Sapien, but Sean Hufford, funeral drone, yeah, they're really useful. But in this particular case, I've found that there is something enshrined in law that gives us the right to be able to get a balanced presentation of opposing views into the schools, and all we've got to do is bring it to the attention of the pupils. So in terms of the activism, I said to Roxanne and Harry and the other guy, Jason, I said, was it an efficient use of your time to get to maybe 300, 400 people over the whole duration of the tour, when you could do it all in one classroom or one hallway? And it's a captive audience. You're not out in the cold. You're not breaking down. You're not filling up. You're not stinking of diesels, sleeping on, all the hassle that goes with it. Let's be honest. It's a stretch of endurance for them to get through that after 7 or 8 weeks or whatever it was. And I take my cap off to them. What they've done is crazy, right?
Insane and amazing what they did.
Yeah, it is. But was it efficient? If they could do their time again and they had, let's just say that they got to 300 people, right? And let's just say for argument's sake, there's 300 kids in this one particular hallway. You could get to the same amount of kids in 1 hour than what he did in the whole 7 weeks of what he was doing. And it costs buttons and you get to an awful lot of kids. And you wouldn't need the media to promote this in any way, because obviously they never promote us, they ridicule us. The kids would do it for you on social media. So we wouldn't even need the press to do it. All we'd have to do is just get into that school by triggering that law, by doing the activism, by getting the message to the kids whilst they're in school. And then that headmaster that stood in the bottom left-hand corner here, he's got a legal obligation to ensure that a balanced discussion, or whatever the phrase was, let me go back to it, a balanced presentation of opposing views is done. Now, obviously, teachers, they're not going to be able to do the balanced presentation of opposing views because they've not been taught in it. They didn't get taught it. It wasn't part of their exams. And they definitely won't know whether or not gravity can be proven or not in school and what the opposing views are. So it's going to have to be done by us. But at least if we get the chance to go in there, and even if it's just for an hour, if you get 300 kids, 200, 300, 400 kids, whatever it is, isn't that a much more efficient use of time and way more impactful? Because you've got all the teachers down one side, you've got all the teachers down the other side, headmasters watching, and then depending on what we actually do on the stage, depending on how well we execute it, and depending on how well we plant that seed, that's incredibly efficient, right? It's not the most efficient way of doing it, but it's way more efficient than driving up and down the country for weeks and weeks and weeks and getting a similar amount of kids. So it's like, this is the next step in the activism. If there's activism to be done, this is how we should do it. We should trigger this law by bringing the issues to the attention of the pupils whilst they're in school, and then asking the headmaster, governing body, and the local authority to ensure that they take reasonable steps to ensure that the pupils are offered a balanced presentation of opposing views. And that, Your Honour, is the law.
Well, I would say, and
Nice,
I think
nice.
that's absolutely
Well
fantastic.
played,
Love
Tony.
it. Go. Yeah, you
I'd
got
say
me. I'm
that
there.
the key is to hit it from all angles. So you've got your people running up and down the country in the camper van. You've got your people on Twitter, on YouTube, in every venue, and it's to hit them at all angles. So
The
I
next
think
team
you're
that
onto
rents the
something.
truck and takes off across on the tour, like you're playing there,
Well,
John.
You know, when some people
Absolutely.
suggest that perhaps it was a controlled rollout on Flat Earth and they were doing it on purpose, and
We
I've
were
never
talking
really
about
wondered
this
why.
earlier.
I've never really wondered how or why that would even make sense. But what does make sense is, if you think about the context, the platform of YouTube, right? We're already preaching to the converted, and it's a small niche area. It's almost as if, call me crazy, it's almost as if we've been penned into the YouTube corner that is Flat Earth, and that's
Yeah.
where we're staying.
Yep.
It'd be
As we watch
very
our numbers get played with, even as we speak, even as we're sitting here live.
And this is why I think it's important to leave all avenues open. You have people who are good at getting out on the streets. You've got people who are just sticking stickers wherever they go. There are people who are on Twitter, on Facebook, on everything else. People like me who don't want to show their face. There are people who are more than happy to show their face. I think it's important to give support and everything to every avenue. And I think, personally, I think your avenue of hitting them via law is one of the strongest avenues there is. And it's something I've advocated for several years now. But I think it should be, a go on every single avenue. Hit
Yeah.
them
the way
every
the
But
way
we're
the
all
way
just
I'm
doing
looking
those
at it,
colours.
Tony, is we've all been out here propagating the message however we have, be that over the internet, talking to people, street activism, whatever. And I feel the system is quite happy with that, because it's containable, it's quantifiable, it's ridiculable. But what you've kind of hit on here, if we can get this through, is a mechanism where you actually use the powers of indoctrination that the system has built up to allow your voice, however small that voice is going to be, however limited in time, it's still quite novel in that it allows the system itself to air your opinion, which I think is the groundbreaking thing that you found there, mate.
So back to the original question that I asked right at the very start. If I'd asked you whether or not we could get Flat Earth into mainstream schools, most of us, I think it was 2-2, and there was like a split decision with, was it Mike? And really, it's like,
It's Mark Devlin. I'm gonna
Mark.
beat you, Mark Devlin.
it's because I know a Mike Devlin, and I can't get the word Mike out of my head.
Oh, okay. Well, you're forgiven.
Yeah. It's because I can't stop thinking that it's Mike Devlin. But anyway, we were 50-50 on whether or not we would ever get Flat Earth into mainstream schools or not. Well, now it's not 50-50. Now it's a case of, when is it going to happen? Not if, when. And that's what we're working on next. Obviously, we've got to, let's just briefly go back to what it says. If we bring to the attention of the pupils whilst they're in school, that triggers the law. Well, if we just write a letter to the headmaster and say, look, this is what the law says, And we don't really want to do this behind your back. We would rather just ask you to let us do it anyway. And then kind of not say, but mean that if you tell us no, we're going to do it anyway. Because if he knows that we know the law and he knows that we know that he's got to do stuff, he's probably going to do it anyway. And let me give you a quick tale. Conspiracy Cats was in chat before. Is he still in chat? Does anybody know?
Chat's
I
off.
don't know.
I've been reading along with you here on the document. I'm not in chat anymore. I'll go back and check.
Yeah, Conspiracy Cats was in chat before. I don't know if he's still there. So if he is still in chat, this is where he fits into this, because he came to me and said, look, I've been on with Dell and I got ridiculed and whatnot. He says, but I'm here as like a teacher. And he says, and I want to have the opposing discussion. He says, I don't want to get involved in the slanging back and forth. And even though he loves it really, but the point is that he came to me and asked, could we have the conversation? And I said, sure. And he said at the time that the headmaster had okayed this in the context of him doing it as a teacher. Now, it didn't mean anything to me at the time. I just thought, oh, he was just being polite and asking permission. But looking back on it now, it dawns on me that what actually was happening was Conspiracy Cat's headmaster was complying with this exact rule by allowing a balanced presentation of opposing views. That's what he did. Now, I thought it was courtesy, professional courtesy only. I didn't think that he was doing his job, and he was doing his job well. I just thought it was courtesy that Katz was saying to his boss, can I do this, boss? And the boss said, yeah, go on, it's fine. I didn't realize it was actually compliance with the rules. And when I spoke to Conspiracy Cats about it, and I asked him, is this something that's like common? And he was like, yeah, we do have this. He said, we talk about all the religious views and all the things that are not in the curriculum that are off topic. He said, that's where they come up. We have dedicated time for it, after school clubs or whatever. He gave it 4 letters, HEF, whatever. But the point is that this has never really made it into it because it's not significant enough. But the point was, Conspiracy Cats was aware that this rule existed. And obviously the headmaster well knew that this rule existed. That's why it was permitted. But as flat earthers, we didn't know until I'm starting to get the word out there that this existed. So now that this law is there and we are aware of it, it's something that flat earth activism should be aware of, because it is the legal way to get into the schools to give that balanced presentation of opposing views, whatever that means.
On that, can I just kind of get a bit of clarity on what you're trying to achieve in here? We're not talking about trying to rewrite the curriculum. We're talking about, I mean, sadly, we're probably talking about the equivalent of when the kids get their gender equality training afternoon, sort of event, but being able to provide that within the school curriculum and it being mandated.
Up with people is going to be here this afternoon for 5th period or something like.
Yeah.
Well, let me put it in this context. We've been brainstorming whether or not one of the headings here is brainstorm. I said to Roxanne, I said, let's brainstorm this as a group. Let's see what we can come up with, right? And we had to decide if we were given an hour with the kids and we were stood at on the stage at the front, and you've got an audience in front of you, basically the same way that this guy has here. So you stood there like this guy and you're looking out in front of them and they're all looking back at you, and you've got an hour and the clock starts now. What do? Do you flat smack them? Do you try and give them some seed planters that plants in the mind? Do you do something more theatrical that's got some kind of theme to it, like a play?
It has to have entertainment value, I would think. They're going to get bored and tune out.
Yeah,
they're trained for entertainment now. So
what
no
I
way
suggested
not to do
was, what I suggested was, imagine that, say for instance, me and Adam, right? I go down the left-hand side, Adam goes down the right-hand side. We both got Bluetooth wireless microphones on, and we look like we're BBC. We've got a battery pack connect to us, and they can see it, and it's very visual that we're proper. And basically, imagine that we had a back and forth, like in a courtroom, and the guy in the blazer is the judge, but he stood behind his pulpit and he's got the black gown on with the horsehair hat on, and he's acting as the role of the judge. You could get all the kids to stand up immediately at the beginning and get them all to stand up while all rise for the judge, and make it a courtroom.
I tell you what, mate, you'll be getting Savage excited. He's probably got half his script written for you.
Yeah, that's it. Because if you try flat smacking them at the too younger age, it's not going to work. So I thought, well, perhaps we should give it a theme. And if we gave it like a quasi-legal setup for them so that there was a bit of a judgy kind of thing, it's interactive because we can, first of all, you get them all to stand up, right? And it's all rise, please, for Judge Savage. And in comes Savage with his black gown on his horse, and then someone says, all be seated. and it's formal, but the kids do it because they know that'll stick with them for the rest of the days, because there was that thing that happened with the court thing. They'll remember that. But let's just say that Adam plays the part of the heliocentric teacher, right? We'll call him Mr. Meakin, because Mr. Meakin teaches physics, and Mr. Meakin can start presenting to the judge some of the strongest evidences for the heliocentric model, so the Aristophanes thing, sticks in the ground, or gravity, or whatever. And I can be the disruptive guy that says, "Objection, Your Honor," and then the judge would say something like, "On what grounds?" And I say, "It's complete fabrication. You can't even prove Aristophanes even existed." And it's like, "Can you prove Aristophanes existed?" And then Meakin's got to say, "No." And then I'll say, "Sir," and I'll say, "Your Honor, Aristophanes existed 100 years before Christ, and some people don't even believe that Christ exists. Why should we accept that Aristophanes did?" And make it really interactive so that there's a back and forth. And I'm not saying this is definitely what we're doing. What I'm saying is this is just, should we do something other than trying to flat smack them? Because if we can give it a theatrical appearance to it, and it's more entertainment, if the last thing that we do is just get a load of business cards and throw them out to the audience and it says research flat earth, that's probably the only thing that we can realistically expect to get from school kids. The fact that they've picked up the card, they've looked at it and thought, research flat earth, what's that mean? And then they've gone and Googled it when they get home. You know what I mean? So
I think if you provide children with honest information, they'll make their own minds up. And that's all you can ask of anyone anyway. Is here's, please look at all the information. That's all whenever you talk flat smacking, however you want to describe it, whenever you engage in flat earth stuff, it's not evangelical as in believe this. It's, to me, it's an appeal to ask people to look at things openly and honestly, with as little, zero's impossible, but as little preconception as they can manage.
Well, on that note, I would like to thank you, Anthony, for presenting that. It was absolutely awesome. And I'd like to say that there are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of research to go beyond here. But as far as my live stream goes, I'm going to have to shut it down now. It's been brilliant. Mark, Devlin, yourself, everything that's been presented, it's been great. And I'll shut the hell up now and leave you to it.
Thank you, John. Love you, cousin.
Thanks, John. You have a great rest of your night. Enjoy your weekend. You were a trooper. You stuck with us for
You did. You hung hard, my friend.
It's knocking on, isn't it?
Guys.
Well, I have to say, I was very active in doing a lot of presentations in school, be it either choir, plays. I had bands. I mean, I was always trying to present something in school that would keep people's attention. Take that forward, I'm not going to say how many years, to this age of constant screens in their faces, and I don't see any way for it not to have this element of entertainment that Anthony's talking about. I think it's a brilliant idea that would get their attention, get them active in it, have a level for them to show, play with a level, or have a setup they can look across something and see a flat surface with something disappearing like the sun, or demonstrations, involvement, active, something that they will remember and take home and do the research. Because if it's just boring information, they're going to tune out, start thinking about what time they're going to get home so they can start playing Fortnite or whatever.
Yeah. I think the key thing I think realistically, the only expectation that we could hope to achieve is that if we said to them and chucked out a load of business cards, literally thrown them into the audience so that they grabbed them, the most we can get them to think is research flat earth and take a business card. If they enjoyed it, then they'll remember it. They won't remember what it's about. We're probably too young, but at least they'll be aware that there is something there called flat earth. And if that's the only thing we can achieve, I think that's an achievement in itself. I don't think that we could ever expect to convert any of them into like whatever views that you may or may not present. But I think if we can just let them know that there is an opposing view, and this is how to find it. And if you want to know more information, subscribe to blah 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 channel. Here you'll find interactive discussions. You'll find people that agree with you, people that disagree with you. It's highly interactive. Blah blah blah. And even if they just come to one hangout, at least they're aware it's there, right? And they'll probably get scared off by some of the foul language or whatever, but at least they're aware that there is an outlet there.
The achievement isn't however many people you awaken. The achievement's getting off your arse and making the effort.
Yeah.
But before we get too deep, because it is knocking on, Mark has stayed with us. I can still see him there. Are you there, Mark?
No, he bounced out. He dropped a note in chat saying he had to leave earlier. So
his DJ's up there still, but I was going to ask his opinion on it. But yeah, I mean, for me, mate, it's so any success isn't necessarily yielded the first time, is it? It's about constant trying, and this for me. We talked about whether it becomes a psyop and all that sort of stuff, and I hope it doesn't. I hope it's a hard slog that's hard fought by the people, not something else.
To be honest, I think the hard work's already been done. I think from this moment on, I mean, if we send a letter to a headmaster and he responds in the positive, which he's duty bound to do, maybe not initially, but if we have to go and leaflet drop the kids whilst they're in school, we will. But then he has to. But I think that once we get that letter back saying, okay, what do you want? And we ask for an hour, say between 2 and 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon when the kids are ready for going home. I think that if we were to be given that hour, the hard work's been done. The rest of it's colour. We can create whatever picture we want. We can colour it, make it as good, as interesting as we can make it, so that the kids just remember what happened. And can you imagine what happens? Kids then go home, tell mum and dad, "Mum, is the earth flat?" No, of course it's not. Well, we had these people in today that were saying that they think that the earth might be flat. And obviously that'll stir up things for the parents ringing the school asking what the hell's going on. And then the school will have to say, well, we're duty bound to do it. And it was really, really good. Because it will be really good if you make it colourful and if you make it entertaining. And ultimately it'll start off with loads of critical acclaim. But ultimately in the long term, it'll probably end up being somewhat really really positive that actually is educational and enjoyable and entertaining. And overall, it may end up being something that's really, really good, not necessarily that's just, oh, look at these fucktards. And we're the creator of it, right? We can make whatever we want. And it's as good as what we are creative. If we're creative, we'll make it good. If we're not creative, it'll be boring and it'll achieve nothing. And I think kids need that stimulation emotionally and psychologically. And if we can make it colourful, we've done it. And as long as we get them to realise that research flat earth is the only phrase that they need to take from it, I think that's hit 400, 300, 200 kids in 1 hour, and you've not had to do much work for it. And I can't see any reason why it wouldn't work myself, to be honest. I think it's a fab, cool, ace idea. And it's just really to let people in flat earth know that this law is there and it's there for us to use. And shout out to the people that donated to my GoFundMe, and shout out to the people that donated to the tour, the Global Eye Tour GoFundMe, because them two things have meshed together, and this is the result. And I think that this is brilliant.
Sounds like we've got a biggest GoFundMe ever, mate. It's a shout out to the community to maybe and if you can, after I've finished rambling, just maybe tell who, if you can contribute towards what you're intimating at, which appears to be a kind of a production, for want of a better word, to present to school kids. Who's going to be organising that, and who can people get in touch with if they think they've got skills to contribute?
Well, obviously, we're going to need some hardware, because I think it's one thing to get permission to use the hall so that we can present our balanced views. But I think it's quite another thing to expect to use their Elecki and their equipment and all that kind of stuff. So I think we're going to have to at least have our own equipment in case they say, yeah, you can come in, but you're not using our stuff. So there might have to be a hardware like purchase of like speakers, microphones, that kind of stuff. But in the short term, literally, I'm talking with Roxanne, obviously, because of the success of the Global Eye Tour. Roxanne, the Globalist Denier, check into her channel. I don't know the channel
Definitely.
names for the other guys. There's Harry and there's
Jason of the Dinsbury family.
yep, and there's Harry. I don't know
And
what his channel.
Robin's channel, I do not remember. Darn it, I had it too.
Lifting the lid.
That's it. I was thinking the veil, but I knew that was our other friends. Thank you for the save, Adam.
And you'll find me on Nathan Oakley's channel frequently. I'm on there most afternoons, 2 till 4 Greenwich Mean Time. Alternatively, just click on Sleeping Warrior. Just Google YouTube Sleeping Warrior. You'll find me. But at the moment, we're just talking about whether or not we can do this and like how we're going to do it and what we're going to create. But there's going to come a point where we need hardware, and it might be that we have to rent it or borrow it in the short term. But little steps. At the minute, we're just talking about what are we going to do, how are we going to do it, when are we going to do it. But I guess within the next month, I reckon realistically, probably maybe New Year by now, get Christmas out of the way. I think that we realistically could try something in January. And all things going well, if we did do it in January, and I was to come back in January and say this is what I said we were going to do, and then we've done it, I think that wow, I mean it'll be excellent just to report back that we've done it and it went successful and it was good. And I think that it will happen. It's just a question of will it be in a month, will it be in 2 months, will it be in 3 months? But I think it will happen. So you got Roxanne the Globalist Denier, you got Nathan Oakley 1980, you got myself Sleeping Warrior, Lifting the Lid, and you've also got Jason of the Didsbury family, is it?
Yeah.
And they're all the main players that are involved at the minute. So it's a case of just keep your eyes open. We're going to be around and we're going to be pushing this. So I guess the appeal really is anybody that's got any ideas for content to be able to fill the hour, or if anybody knows contacts that might be able to loan us equipment or whatever, if you feel you can help, just get in touch with some of us and just make yourself known, because if we can do this and we can get that door open to us to go into ABC High School and speak to the kids on a stage, we'd be mad not to do it, right?
I'll tell you what, mate. I'll tell you what. Zach had a presentation that could have filled a good chunk of that tonight. Cracker. In regards to diffraction limits and resolutions and areas diffraction, an absolute cracker. It's been a shame that it's been filled with such amazing content tonight, mate, because I think we'll have to get it on next week, Zach. What do you reckon?
Yeah, we won't forget it.
Yeah, I'm right, but
I didn't even realize you were there, Zach. You were that quiet.
Yeah, I've been jamming around the fire, playing guitar and singing. I've been
Were you
listening
listening
too.
to what
It's
was?
been really good practice. Yeah,
Were you
yeah,
listening to what was being said?
yeah.
What
Yeah,
did you
I'm
think?
learning how to. I think it's very interesting. I don't know if it's going to happen about the whole being political and all that, but I'd push it, man.
Well, I'm going to be writing to the Secretary of State for Education, my concerns, and I'm going to ask him for what he thinks about my concerns, and if he thinks he should do something, what does he think he should do? But I'm going to ask him to consider at least giving some element of the national curriculum to the opposing views, because there
At
are
least
opposing views.
geocentrism, like you said. At least
Yeah.
geocentrism.
Yeah.
Because
Even if you disagree with
heliocentrism is a
geocentrism,
joke.
which I disagree with it, at least it should be mentioned, and there should be an element of the national curriculum for the opposing views. And obviously, it doesn't exist at the moment. It might get mentioned in a line, but that's not really fair, proportionate,
Yeah, exactly.
given how much time is committed towards the heliocentric model, right?
Yeah, I agree, 100%. Yeah, this is awesome, man. Go with
I
it.
hope it is. Can't wait to try it. Coming as well.
Shit.
Josh, you've been quiet.
I'm always quiet. I keep my stuff on mute so you don't hear me back here hitting my vaporizer or, whatever. But I know I dig it. I think it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I think so too.
I know we're winding down, and I hate to just kind of throw a wrench in this. If we could strong arm Flat Earth into the classroom, you think
I think we have already.
But do you think we're in a position where, I mean, it's been in there. I mean, technically, we were all heard of the idiocy of flat earthers.
No, I mean, teachers are now, what we've heard recently about. If you go into a physics class and the teacher says, "Hey, if you believe in flat Earth, this isn't the class for you," then we're being hurt. We are. if the teachers have to come out and say it at the beginning of the class, then there's strides definitely being made. We all need to hold our heads up because it's going quicker than I thought it would. Even if it may be one of their little experiments that they're doing on us, you know, how they do those things, just to see what would happen. But yeah, it's definitely hitting the youth.
Yeah. So I guess it's a case of watch this space, and we'll report back in the next month or so. Because I mean, it's not going to take long to get a letter to the headmaster. Whether he responds or not is another thing. But we'll be bullying him if he doesn't. But there will be progress. It's just a case of how quick will it be. But I guess you'll see in the next coming weeks and months if, as and when we keep in touch with people and let people know what's happening. But basically, watch this space. It's going to get interesting.
Talking about space,
Yeah, I
we've
can't
not
wait to see
had
what happens next.
we've not had any space lettuce tonight. We've got to have a little bit, Josh, surely, before I go to bed.
Let's see. Well, what did we have this morning? We had some good stuff, I think. Did we not? And we got a little sidetracked. We didn't spend a whole lot of time on a whole lot
We
of
kind of got hung up on the whole story about the moon and everybody, you know, that won't let go of these crazy conspiracy theories about the moon. Just generally all the crap that we talk about continuously here on our channel. Just all the inconsistencies, some of the crap. You know, the bell rang like a moon. The moon rang like a bell when they hit it, or when there's moonquakes, or when Buzz and crew threw their life support through an open airlock on a dead world they're about to launch from the first time ever. But hey, you know, they had faith. Anyway, yeah, it rang like a bell. I don't know how they recorded that across the vacuum of space or whatever, but somehow they picked up the fact that it rang like a bell. What else? Oh, the whole hologram moon thing. We talked about that idea. The moon being an asteroid that got pulled into our orbit and mined by an alien intelligent. It being a functioning artificial satellite with its own light source, those things.
It's funny how those ridiculous things, stories, fantasies, whatever, are treated with less scorn and what's the word, animosity, than just suggesting a flat Earth alternative. It's the toleration of them is interesting.
And the number one on the article really was silly to me because I never thought this, even as a young child, but the whole idea that people at one point thought the moon was made of cheese. Wallace and Gromit, maybe, but not like real thinking people.
Well, everybody
Okay.
believed in Santa. Why not the moon made of cheese?
I was going to say, can you disprove that, Walt?
No, I can't. I know the moon does make people go crazy, without a doubt. You can ask Sheldon there, she'll tell you. The moon makes me a lunatic when it's full. But that's just fantasy. That's not real. What else? The moon. We didn't make it to the moon because of the Van Allen radiation belt. But as astronaut Alan Bean let us all know, that was simply a fact of them not having discovered it yet. So they were cool. They were
Yeah. We didn't know it was a problem until we done it and then realised it was a problem.
Oh, this moon chat's it's memory jogged me today. I'll give you one real positive thing that gave me a little lift today. One of my patients came in and sorted, whatever needed sorting. And he said, "Oi, I want a word with you." He says, "I saw this bloke in the Evening Post, and he reckons the Earth's flat, and he looked just like you."
Nice. I love it.
So we had a good little chat and a lot of stuff, and he wasn't poo-pooing it. He says, "Well, I'll tell you one thing. I always knew the moon landings were fake." I said, "Well, start there, mate." So another positive out of the UK tour. That was
nice. That is so awesome.
All out of Harry and Jason's. Robin and Roxanne's work. Yeah, top, mate. It's amazing when that happened today. It was brilliant.
Seems like there was something. Oh, the model of our universe. The what is it called? The standard model, which lays out everything with 17 building blocks. Period. There's 6 quarks, 6 leptons, 4 force carrier particles, and the Higgs boson. That's it. That's all we need. Oh, wait, then there's that whole dark matter thing they can't find or figure out or measure or weigh or detect in any possible manner. It's got to be there, or else all their other bullshit doesn't add up, but they just can't seem to find it.
I think that's harsh. I think it's perfectly detectable. It's detectable by the holes in their mathematics that proves the existence of everything that doesn't work. That's why it's there.
You're probably on something. You should have a paper on this, I think, sir.
Toilet
And apparently
paper.
they don't understand why the expansion of the universe is accelerating. I'm sorry. It's not slowing down as a natural bang or whatever would have occurred and slowed down over time. No, the universe's expansion away from us, they say in the article, the universe's expansion away from us is actually speeding up.
Can I just let me just address 2 messages in chat?
Surely.
Leeds Rules says, Anthony, if it exists a law in schools, what about certain college courses too for a day's lecture? It applies to anything state applied. If there's a state function, the children, so long as they're under the age of 16 or 18, if they're in state education, it would apply. That rule would apply, according to the definition anyway. And then there was another message which said, where was it? Where's it gone? Bear with me. I'm looking for it.
Bearing with.
While you're looking real quick, all those galaxies are moving away from us at 45 miles per second.
So how far do you reckon they're going to move between now and when Anthony finds this quote?
Light years.
Well, since the speed multiplies for each additional megaparsec, a distance of 3.2 million light years relative to our position, I'd say quite a freaking lot.
Parsecs.
I still can't find that other question.
Megaparsecs.
Megaparsec.
The big ones. Yeah, not just regular parsecs. The big ones. The multi-pack.
That's Millennium Falcon shit, that is.
Let's see. Was there something else ridiculous? Oh, wait. Is there a graviton? I know there is one because I rode it. It was my favorite ride at the fair. But is there a particle called a graviton that is actually the gravitational particle? They still can't find it, even though we've measured some kind of animation from a quadrillion miles away of some galaxies colliding. Somehow from Louisiana, we measured that, but they can't really figure out if it was particles or if it was waves or I think they're.
I've just realised I've just said something false. It wouldn't apply to colleges because this is only in the context of the national curriculum, which stops at the age of 16. So it'd only be high schools.
Oh, that's when most of the damage is done.
And that's probably the best time, because by college they're already little snowflakes that are offended at the faintest thought that might be outside their little box, their little paradigm. I think that was it. That was pretty much all the questions. Dark matter, definitely one of the. Oh, it was massive neutrinos. I don't know how you say it. How do you say it?
Neutrinos.
I thought so. Well, a band called Klaatu taught me to say neutrino. I'm going to play that song soon, but that's a strike. We won't do that.
You'll get as a strike.
That's a strike. I won't play it. Apparently they have mass when they shouldn't, and they keep switching back and forth between each other. And they think there might be a new flavor they're going to invent sometime soon to fill one of their holes. Where is it? I can't find the flavor. Is it dark? Is it a dark one?
I think it was dark energy.
Oh, that's it. Dark energy. You're right, sir. Thank
We
you.
were talking dark matter before. I think that one was dark energy.
So yeah, space, the
It's
final
really weird
frontier.
where they just plug stuff in there. Man, all these galaxies are doing stuff that just don't make any sense to our math. Well, I guess we just make the math fit. We'll just go ahead and start creating stuff. So there's got to be this other stuff there because we've got everything figured out. So
So our math can't be wrong. So
Right.
yeah, we just have to think really harder. I think really hard. I think really hard.
Imagineer. It's the skill. Right, guys, I'm done.
yeah,
Anybody
me
else
too.
got anything to throw in?
I think I'm pretty much spent. I think I've even closed the damn page with chat. Sorry, everybody. I love y'all. I'll find you in a minute. I did. I closed everything. Darn it.
I'm off back to run the line at the junior football tomorrow, and it'll be the first time I've done it since the evening post event. So I shall.
Wait.
I get enough abuse on a good day, so Christ knows what's going to happen.
Well, good luck, Adam.
I'm going to get a new flag position for its flat. I know what offside is, but we'll have one for its flat.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen next week either.
Good
'cause
night,
I'll be in
Constance.
Denver next weekend.
Oh, that's right. Oh man, we're gonna have to like have you on live every day. You realize that, right?
Yeah, as soon as I get there.
Well, you'll have to be
We'll just
streaming live.
We'll just throw you over on this 24-hour channel live stream from there all day and all night. What's going on? I think Hank is licking his face while he's sleeping.
That's not a.
Yeah, you
thanks,
should be
thanks,
there
thanks.
in the thick of it, shouldn't you, Zach, on next Friday?
Yeah, I will
Well, I'm
be.
excited for you, man.
Oh,
Yeah.
excellent. Well, don't get as drunk as I did
But
at the UK
Anybody
one.
that helped me get so much, I appreciate it.
Right, guys, that's me done. I'm off to bed. I shall catch you all next time.
Thank you, Anthony, so much.
Thank you
Love
for your
you,
time, gentlemen.
God bless,
Take
mate.
care,
Well
Anthony.
done, pal. Thanks for your efforts, mate.
Yeah, good sleuthing, Anthony. That's awesome stuff.
Amazing stuff. I'm
Watch
there
this
for you,
space.
man.
It's just about to
Anything I
get
can help you
interesting.
with as far as production and all that stuff. Like I said, I used to do it all back in the day, so I'll help any way I can for sure.
Cool, man. Well, watch this space. It's about to get colourful.
That's it. Love you, bro.
Good night, guys.
Later.
See you soon.
God bless.
All right.
pal.
Bye-bye.
And certainly, thank you so much to Mark Devlin. An amazing first part and part of the second part. It was amazing, and certainly hope he will be back soon. Again, there were so many other avenues I wanted to explore for sure.
Top knowledge on that. On the
Amazing
because the knowledge in the music industry, the detail that he pulled out there just in little bits was outstanding, and like I say, impressive. Really, thanks, Mark. It was a pleasure meeting you, mate.
So my big intro for Mark was basically, now that I'm putting the cart before the horse, it was really just everything that he got to already, that he figured out all by himself. That, we love Billy Ray Valentine, and Billy Ray Valentine and the Infinite Fringe really put us on TFR, and of course, put us in touch with Mark Devlin. It's a great show. Billy Ray's a very professional show host. His show is great. It's an hour long. He gets in there. You get some great information. Very, very professional. This is not that. You are not here to do the Infinite Fringe with Billy Ray Valentine. This is Iron Realm Media. You're just here to hang out, BS, have a good time, and we'll just get to know each other. So that was my big introduction. Now that he's
And
gone.
we covered that exact thing, and he settled right in and relaxed, and I think it it was amazing. Thank you so much, Mark.
Yep. Thank you so much. That's the other big shout out to Flat Earth Audio with our little.
Oh my goodness, yes.
I want to go out on that too. I've got it queued up in my soundboard already. In fact, let me save it now so I don't lose it and have to search again later.
I turned it on today on my computer here and started noodling around with a line or two.
Ooh. Ooh.
I told him in Skype earlier that I would mess around and see if I can get a little line to throw in. He said any kind of remix you want to do, because of course I was instantly like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. We need to do something together, something else,
Is it his voice? What have you asked?
I don't know. I
who are
haven't
the
dug that
vocals?
deep. Yeah, I'm not sure. I would assume, unless he's got a team that he just throws stuff at and they do it for him. But
Oh,
yeah,
shout out, dude! Come on and
amazing
explain,
stuff.
because it's wicked.
Yeah,
mate.
it's amazing. It sends chills. I love it. I love it. Love it. Love it.
I got chills the first time I heard it once he started busting in with that. Or he or his studio musicians.
Right, his team, right.
But no, it really is.
Everybody in chat, thank you. It was amazing. I tried to keep up and definitely lost the thread too many times. I could not turn my attention away from Mark and all the information. It was like just trying to keep up was a handful, and then trying to keep up with you guys as well. I failed a few times. Hope we got the questions answered for you as best we could. And as always, you guys make it what it is. We wouldn't be here doing this. Well, we'd be here doing it to an empty room, but we love the fact that you guys are here with it. We love it. Thank you.
And don't let YouTube fool you. It's not an empty room.
We've
Right.
Thing is though,
And that was amazing that
we've
caught
done it
that
to an
tonight.
empty room.
We caught that tonight on tape, on film, on video, on DAT, on everything that you could possibly, I guess, record it on. We've got it, because without a doubt, I sat here and watched the thumbs up disappear down to one, lit up one that was mine, as at least 3 or 4 other people in chat were saying that they saw their lit up one thumb. That doesn't add up.
I see 4 up and 15 down for whatever that's worth.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely funny. We got to watch it happen. Yes, YouTube is a hoax, Constance. Thank you so much. Leeds, thank you. I'm not going to start because I'm going to miss somebody, everybody. I love you all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank everybody for tuning in. We'll see you back here next week.
Yeah, for sure.
Or Tuesdays and Fridays over on TFR. Feel free to go sign up to TFR through the Ironworks link. You can check out the Ironworks and all of our past shows, over 100 shows. That's over 200 hours. Look at us go. Hot diggity. And access to all the other great hosts over there as well, too. So with that one little subscription, you get archived for everyone. So you can dig in. I mean, talk about some great Flat Earth stuff. There's Mark Sargent there. Jaron's there. Zen Garcia's there. Paul on the Plane just recently got there. Crow 777's there. Who am I missing? Rob Skiba's over there, dude. He's not over there, is he?
He was.
Maybe he is. I don't know.
I like that. I like that woo crew, Josh.
I see. I just lose track. I can't keep track of them all.
There's too many to keep up with. And there's new ones recently I noticed that I didn't know.
Yeah, new hosts added.
So I
periodically
can keep up, and I'm there.
But yeah, good stuff. All sorts of different information too. Not just Flat Earth stuff, not just conspiratorial stuff. Some of it is sort of political and current event stuff too. Kev Baker, he covers a little bit everything, right down to the woo woo. So check us out over there on
I
TF.
like the woo woo. Revolutionary Radio with Rob Skiba.
I knew he was over there. I was just joking. I was joshing you.
I know. I was just trying to make sure I wasn't talking out of my head.
All right, I gotta go. I've been up for a while.
Get me some
Sorry
Flat
about the
Earth
car
audio.
situation there, man.
Yeah, that's all right. I'll worry about it tomorrow.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna go say hi to my florists and not worry about it tonight.
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's do it.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, John. Thank you, Rob.
Yes, thank you, Rob. John, Adam, Zach, I know you're still being quiet over there in the corner. And I don't have you turned down because you're on the call.
Thank you, Zach.
All right. Everybody, thank you so much. This has been Iron Realm Media and another fabulous Friday where we keep it flat. Have no sphere. We'll be right back here next week. My name is Josh Corey. Love you guys. Bye-bye.